Be right back. That's true. Thank you for the follow. Thanks for the likes.
Her time in him. Meanwhile, they see a woman consoling a girl who wants to ask a certain man for his number, but doesn't have the courage because he's a famous one. Seolhwa, witnessing the exchange, asks about the meaning behind it. Solmi explains that the customers visiting this demon shop are often interested in the owner, who doesn't understand their true intentions. When they enter the shop, it turns out this demon is none other than Goyu. For a moment, they exchange a few words about his reason for closing the shop earlier. Meanwhile, Seolhwa, uninterested in their conversation, looks toward a boy who seems like a demon. Solmi tenses when she turns to see Seolhwa picking a fight with the boy for his arrogant behavior. Solmi tries to reason with her, but Seolhwa cuts her off, saying she knows they are in the human world but already knows this boy, which startles Solmi. Then the boy suddenly starts accusing her, saying she, as a fox, is trying to claim the throne after the tiger left the jungle. Solmi feels quite confused by the exchange. However, the real story is about the root of demons. Demons that originate from animals inherit the rivalry those animals had in their natural forms. Essentially, these two are descendants of enemy animals, so they feel a natural animosity toward each other. At this moment, due to the same animosity, they both threaten to kill each other. But the boy is interrupted by a new voice, someone who tries to slap some sense into him, reminding him that it's their first day in the human world, and getting into a fight with a fox could tarnish his reputation. He protests, arguing that she was the one who glared at him and threatened him first. The new voice tries to make him understand that Seolhwa belongs to the most influential clan in the demon world, while he, on the other hand, doesn't have any clan to back him up. In the end, she adds that, in this situation, he will be blamed for the fiasco no matter what. Seolhwa scoffs at this, thinking Wolyung is just making an excuse to avoid fighting. However, she makes an excuse herself, claiming that she had no intention of killing the last tiger, so she will overlook the matter. Her statement stuns Solmi because, usually, Seolhwa would take down the boy without a second thought. But this time she restrains herself with a suitable reason. Seolhwa, on the other hand, quips about the irony of the situation. That this woman is a wicked ghost taking care of the last tiger. According to Korean folklore, such ghosts are known to lead tigers to food. She even advises the tiger kid to stay alert around this woman, as she might harm him later. Then she turns to Goyu and asks about his purpose in calling them there. The wicked ghost also wants to know if they are still instructed to keep a low profile after yesterday's incident. Goyu begins to explain that Judge Mangtae had issued an emergency approval for several strong demons who lacked the qualifications to enter the human world. He adds that he has since cancelled all these licenses except for the 3 people standing there due to their incapability. Upon hearing that, especially Solmi becomes worried about Seo. He reassures her that Seo is the exception, but he insists that Seo cannot survive in the demon world if left alone, no matter how strong he is. In the end, Seolhwa announces her decision to return to the demon world to train Seo, as she believes he has potential, instead of lingering there. However, she is stopped by Goyu's words, who reminds her that he is still there. In the end, he deadpans that their next task is to protect him from humans. The scene shifts back to Seo and the others in a small department, where our boy is shocked to learn that Bi-hyung could be his ancestor. He wonders how old Bi-hyung must be. Mangtae answers that if Bi-hyung is the person they think he is, then he must be 1,500 years old. Seo is stunned to hear this, as he didn't know demons could live this long. Yu-young interjects, clarifying that this isn't the case for most demons, as the average age of a demon is 500 years. However, if a demon is powerful enough to expand their demon energy, they can live up to 1,000 years at most. Seo finds it hard to believe that Bi-hyung could be this old based on his appearance. Yu-young agrees with him, adding that even his Ishimi attack didn't leave a scratch on Bi-hyung. Yu-young feels disheartened because of his perceived incompetence. Mangtae tries to console him, saying that only Seolhwa and Goeyu have the potential to rival Bi-hyung's power, so there's no need for him to think this way. He turns to Seo and begins to tell him about the hidden history of goblins. It is said that goblins disappeared instantly 666 years ago. The reason is that at that time, goblins were divided into two groups. One was against the Goblin King and his men, who were defeated by the other group. However, the winning group didn't survive either due to the battle and eventually died out. At that time, only one person survived, Bacon, who was the runner-up of the last festival. But due to the injuries he sustained during the festival, he didn't survive for long. Mengte estimates that Bacon must have died about 500 years ago, which raises doubt about whether Xiao could truly be his descendant. However, the appearance of this Bihyong, with the same looks and power as 1,000 years ago, complicates matters. Xiao speculates that this person must be his ancestor. Mengte agrees with him while saying that, but they don't know that someone with his caliber has been hiding in the shadows until now. Besides, there is also the question of why Xiao is only now being discovered as having goblin blood. Then he asks for an answer about his parents to understand his legacy. Next, he asks whether his mother is an ordinary human being. At that same moment, his mother enters the home. The scene flashes to the past, where our boy is a chubby third grader who gets into a fight with a fifth grader. His mother apologizes to his teacher on his behalf, trying to assure her that it's not Xiao's fault at all. She explains that they had taken the ball from him, and Xiao didn't hurt them. They only got a few scratches. At that, his mother apologizes to his teacher again. Afterward, she asks our grumpy hero if he's upset, but he replies that he's the one who got into the fight. She tells him that, although he wasn't wrong, these things happen sometimes. Then she makes him promise that he will never hurt anyone or get into a fight, which shapes Xiao's humble personality. To him, it felt like she was asking for a favor, and he decided to give it to her, not getting into any more fights afterward, until he becomes a demon. Back in the present, he informs Mengte that his father was an exceptional wrestler, so he doubts his goblin genes come from him. On the other side, his mother worked with ancient art, so she is an ordinary human being. This is the reason he never knew he was a goblin. However, Mengte doesn't agree with him, as he thinks she might be hiding this on purpose. Then he points out his improvement in just a few days, transforming into a goblin. He states that when he approached him, it was purely out of duty to inform him about his legacy, but he wasn't hoping for much. At that, Xiao interrupts, saying they are disturbed that he doesn't think they are as weak as they believe. Yu Yang intervenes by informing him that even according to the goblin's status, his progress is out of the ordinary. At that, Mengte also interjects, saying that his progress makes him doubt whether he is really a half-demon. It could be the case that he was helping Bihyong and was his right-hand man. At that, he protests. Mengte says that he believes in him and that he is innocent. Yu Yang informs him that the shaman doesn't believe in this, as they think he was helping Bihyong, since they were masking the appearance of souls. This led them to cooperate with the shaman and subjugate the culprits from 2 weeks ago. He adds that the shaman even contacted human higher-ups to cover up the demon incident, planning for one night to subjugate the demons. Then he shows him an internet post in which people are starting to doubt the last incident and the disappearance of humans over the past few months. Mengte adds that the shaman has lost face, and now they need a scapegoat to save their reputation. Because of today's incident, which occurred in broad daylight and was witnessed by many humans, the shaman demands the elimination of the demon who caused it. At that, Xiao admits that it's his fault for acting on his own, but Mengte interjects, saying that even though Xiao acted on his own, he didn't go against the humans, and it's not like the humans saw him in his demon form. So it is his right to pass judgment on him, whether to punish him or not. They are violating his authority by demanding that they hand him over. But in the end, Mengte consoles him by saying that he won't do that. Instead, he will protect him and his mother. Xiao is startled when he mentions his mother. Yu Yang explains that the shaman thinks she is also a sinner, as she was the one who raised him. Upon hearing this, he immediately rushes toward the window to escape. Mengte immediately binds him with his demon magic, saying that by going to his mother, he is doing exactly what the shamans want. He should stay where he is while Mengte sends someone to protect his mother. Yu Yang also tries to reason with him, saying that they don't know what will happen to him in his current state if the shaman catches him. But he apologizes, saying that it's all his fault for going out without Mengte's permission. He knows he acted without thinking about the consequences, which led to this current situation. However, he pleads with them to understand that if something happens to his mother because of his carelessness, he won't be able to forgive himself. The next moment, he breaks free from his restraints and gets away, which astonishes Mengte. He turns to them, promising to accept whatever punishment they throw at him once he ensures the safety of his mother. With that, he jumps from the window. Then Mengte asks Yu Yang why he didn't stop the boy. He explains that he didn't have any water to use nearby, and he can't use the water from the pipes. Mengte reminds him that it's raining. Yu Yang chuckles nervously at that. Mengte comments on his soft nature, saying that it made him fall behind his sister, who was weaker than him. He doesn't know the mystery of his clan, where such softness can make one the strongest. Yu Yang reminds him that he was also the one who let Xiao go because his lawful Xiut was not weak enough to be turned by him, no matter how strong he was. Mangte answers that, no matter what Seo does from now on, it will not affect their relationship with the shaman. Besides, he holds himself responsible for the situation, as he didn't see the whole story. Most importantly, he didn't have the heart to stop a child from protecting his mother. Meanwhile, Seo's mother is trying to contact her son in her apartment. Then there's a knock on the door, and she is alerted. At this moment, Seolhwa uses her whisper on her and freezes her. She comments on how Solmi was right that she had underestimated humans. The next moment, Yusin is inside the house, but she assumes he must be an enemy. She threatens to kill him while ordering him to kneel. Seolhwa uses her violet whisper to stop Yusin, who doesn't draw his sword right away in order to avoid getting Seo's mother caught in their fight. The next moment, Solmi enters the apartment, her expression one of relief upon seeing Seo's mother in one piece. She replies that it's because it seems like this shaman is quite weak, so she secured her without much resistance. Then she offers to take Seo's mother outside, as the space fold might affect her. Suddenly they feel a strange sensation around them, something new to them since they were born after the festival. But Yusin immediately recognizes it as a barrier, prompting Seolhwa to comment that their enemy doesn't want to avoid the clash. Seolhwa understands that they had already planned all of this, but she doesn't understand why they sent one of them beforehand. She is stunned to see Yusin breaking out of her violet whisper. She's ready to summon the Demon Emperor, but Yusin immediately throws his sword away while explaining that he didn't come here to fight because he is Seo's friend. He is even willing to cooperate. Solmi immediately recognizes him. She tells Seolhwa that he was the one who saved Seo when she was out. Yusin emphasizes that they won't get out because of the barrier around the whole apartment complex, but they can destroy it from the inside. Seolhwa doesn't like how he's talking like they're already best friends. Yusin doesn't understand what she's saying. She clarifies that it's true he's Seo's friend, but first of all, he is a shaman, and his loyalty lies with his profession, as Seo is no longer human. She doesn't believe that he would go against his principles on the basis of friendship alone. Solmi, seeing their exchange, understands that Seolhwa is right. Meanwhile, our boy stops in front of his apartment complex, despite the fact that his muscles are strained with pain. He looks at the building and senses the energy of the barrier but doesn't understand what it is. He tries to understand what he's sensing and is about to take another step when he's stopped by a voice. The voice belongs to the shaman, who introduces himself as Jagwang and comments on the smaller body of our hero, who doesn't look like a half-goblin but stops in front of the barrier when sensing it. When he introduces himself as a Class 3 shaman from the Shaman Agency, our hero understands that this guy must be related to Yusin, as the agency is run by his family. He demands that our hero surrender, revealing that he has placed the barrier around the complex. He adds that soon his comrades will get to Seo's mother as well. If he doesn't surrender, his mother will be punished for it. It's only a matter of time before he's caught, as he's a wanted demon by all the shamans of the country. Our hero considers engaging in a fight but stops, realizing they are in a populated area. At the same time, he senses someone attacking from behind. A different shaman attacks him, but he dodges her strike with his quick reflexes. The next moment, he is stunned to find himself trapped inside the barrier. Jagwang tells him that he's now like a fish caught in a trap and there's no way out, so he should surrender quietly. However, our hero stands firm, ready for a fight. At that moment, he is startled as he senses demon energy coming from Seolhwa's apartment. He quickly runs in the opposite direction, understanding that there must be other demons nearby, or at least Seolhwa with her. While reflecting on this, he formulates a plan to get as far away from his mother as possible, so he can buy Seolhwa enough time to secure her. His mother is the priority of the shaman, and he needs to protect her. The next moment, Jagwang attacks, but he dodges the strike. As he fights with this new shaman, he realizes that Jagwang is far stronger than he had expected, much stronger than Yusin had been during their last encounter. Jagwang, while fighting, comments that it seems like our hero knows martial arts. But Seo knows it's not a one-on-one fight. There's a female shaman involved as well. The energy she's emitting proves she's a much stronger opponent than Jagwang, who seems to be growing weaker with each passing moment. Before going ahead, he expresses his concern that they might hurt people since they are fighting in broad daylight. Jagwang explains that since the barrier is placed around the complex, passerby who don't have demon energy won't be able to see inside. Additionally, those inside the complex are enchanted to sleep, and the spell will be broken once the barrier is lifted after a few hours. The next moment, he again asks why our boy is also brimming with demon energy. He blocks the attack while feeling a sense of relief, realizing he no longer needs to hold back. Goblin. Now he grabs Jagwang's shirt and throws him far away with his thunderous strength. He then warns them that he held back not because he thought they were weak, but because he didn't want to stain his hands with someone's blood. He knows they won't stop him, but he makes it clear that he won't hold back anymore. Jagwang, on the other hand, grits his teeth and charges at him again, but our boy is more than ready to counter every attack. Jaguang can't comprehend how he is taking all his attacks so effortlessly. It feels like punching a solid wall. Finally, Xiu decides it's enough. He punches Jaguang, sending him flying to the other side of the ground. Then he turns to the female shaman and assumes that she is going to fight on her own rather than helping her comrades. Xiu reminds her that the same warning applies to her, as he won't hesitate to attack her as well. But before he can continue, he freezes upon hearing Jaguang cursing the woman, calling her nothing more than a love child. Xiu questions her presence and tries to figure out why she's even here, as it seems she has another purpose entirely. He shouts, demanding whether she open the portal to screw him over and orders her to summon. Xiu, on the other side, doesn't understand the conflict between the shaman and Jaguang. But he can sense one thing. The person in front of him is no ordinary opponent. He knows he needs to take action before she does. He immediately rushes toward her to stop her, but it seems she is one step ahead and summons a chain of 100 spirits to bind him. It takes him a moment to break through the chains and attack her again, only to have his strike blocked by a thin barrier surrounding her. Watching him, she quickly understands that basic exorcism won't work against him, but her protective shield will keep her safe. He immediately summons his goblin club and begins analyzing his enemy. His attacks don't land because she retreats on her own. However, he notices that while the barrier protects her, it also seems to limit her movements. While she chants, he observes the barrier around her, trying to determine whether it's temporary or if it can endure only a specific amount or type of attack. Finally, she completes her chant, and Xiu suddenly senses a spirit fire appear behind him. The scene shifts to Yusin inside Xiu's apartment, where he is elaborating on the shaman's plan. He informs them that there are a total of 5 shamans, 3 of whom are heads and 2 are assistants, who have surrounded the complex from all 4 sides to form a barrier. They are being used as the axes of the barrier instead of talismans. He explains that they need to fight at least half of them to collapse the barrier. He also expresses his concern about their lack of experience in dealing with shamans, as they have no prior knowledge or skills for fighting them. He warns them that the shamans have trained in martial arts and Taoist magic specifically to kill demons. So regardless of their strength, these shamans are fully capable of killing them. Moreover, the 3 head shamans are among the few special ones who can kill spirit-level demons. So he proposes taking down only 1 head shaman while he handles the other. He suggests they do it simultaneously so the other shamans won't notice. This will be enough to break the barrier and reach Xiu's mother. Xiu urges them to go ahead, saying he knows the local terrain. But she reminds him that he is not in a condition to fight a shaman, as his power has been blocked, leaving him speechless. Solmi shows her concern, pointing out that taking down 2 shamans wouldn't be an easy feat. Besides, they must not forget about the humans who could get caught in the fight. Seolwa reminds her that it is the shaman's duty to protect those humans. However, Yusin's statement contradicts this, as he explains that the shamans are too focused on Xiu to care about 1 or 2 casualties. Solmi raises a question about their focus on Xiu. He answers that it's not about catching Xiu, but more about power and arrogance. Then he deadpans that demons aren't the only creatures who have been waiting for these 666 years to pass. Shamans have been waiting too. Solmi asks what he means, pointing out that humans have progressed so much in the last century after freeing themselves from the clutches of demons. He agrees with her, acknowledging that it has been a golden period for humanity, but not for shamans. Due to the lack of demons, shamans are now seen as nothing more than outdated, superstitious beings. He adds that there is a particular inferiority complex in the younger generation of shamans, and they have been eagerly waiting for these 6 months to end so they can laugh at humanity's expense when humans are forced to face demons again. He continues speaking about the dark side of his fellow shamans, explaining that they don't care about the disappearance of humans or what happened last night. They talk big in front of government officials, but their real aim is to catch the culprit only to save face. This is their way of stopping the government from questioning their authority. Solmi is completely flabbergasted to learn that shamans don't care about civilians. Suddenly, they sense an overwhelming surge of energy and turn to Yusin for an explanation. He states that this is Jaguang opening the convergence of 100. He explains that Korean shamans are basically categorized into 2 types. The first are sutra chanters, who extract power by reciting scripture. They can amplify energy in various ways, according to the circumstances. The second class consists of shamans who can summon deities. These shamans are born with the sensitivity to connect with a group of 100 vital forces. Essentially, they summon a deity into their own bodies. This is exactly what Jaguang is doing while summoning the divine general of the dancing sword. Xiu is awed to witness such a feat for the first time in his life. But the event takes a strange twist when something within him resonates with the deity's energy. It is natural for a human or a demon to freeze when faced with the overwhelming presence of an otherworldly being. However, Xiu is brave enough to push through his initial reaction and prepare to attack. He analyzes that this powerful being lacks a physical body, Meanwhile, Jaguang completes the first level integration and immediately attacks Xiao, who stands ready with his club. The female shaman observing the fight doesn't understand why Xiao is on the defensive, even though his speed matches Jaguang's attacks. Suddenly, she notices something unusual. On the other hand, Xiao is deeply engrossed in his fight with Jaguang, struggling to overpower him. Finally, after a while, Jaguang breaks Xiao's club, slashes both his arms, and ultimately defeats him. Xiao ends up lying on the ground, battered and defeated. The deity inside Jaguang addresses the female shaman and asks her reason for fighting Xiao. She answers that Xiao is someone who is half demon and has committed the sin of killing numerous human beings. After listening to this, he warns her to choose her next words carefully. He then explains that Xiao has the skill to break through his attacks, but didn't do so for one reason: to protect the humans living there. Xiao endured his attacks because he knew that using the full extent of his power would harm the humans. The general declares that he doesn't believe Xiao is a sinner who would harm any human, despite having demon blood running through his veins. He accuses her of making Xiao the scapegoat for their mistakes. She apologizes afterward. Meanwhile, Xiao is on the verge of collapse, not only due to his back-to-back fights with two demons, but also because of the demon pills, which are the main culprit. For normal demons, the demon pills are nothing more than a nutrient supplement and don't affect them much, even when taken in large quantities. But Xiao is an exceptional case because his body is highly sensitive to them. By taking 2 pills within a minute, his body has taken a severe toll, bringing him to the verge of breaking his crystal. Normally, he would recover with his energy, but now he can only go as far as regenerating an incomplete arm. With the help of his new arm, he summons his scroll. The snap of his fingers grabs the attention of the deity, who wonders why Xiao hasn't restored his body since he could easily escape this way. The deity then turns to the female shaman, asking if they need Xiao alive, to which she answers affirmatively. He agrees with her, stating that he doesn't want to kill Xiao either. At this moment, our boy holds one of the tricolor gourds in his hand, which he received from Yusin to use in emergencies. Without hesitation, he crushes it in his hand, immediately putting the deity on guard. Meanwhile, the tricolor gourd understands Xiao's dire situation and begins providing him with the energy he needs to restore himself. The female shaman senses that the tricolor gourd was crafted by a skilled shaman a few years ago, but she doubts it will be effective for him. Contrary to her belief, it works perfectly for our boy, who now has a fully restored and healthy body. The deity is fascinated by his recovery and the way his energy resonates with shamanic power. Once again, the deity attacks him, but this time Xiao withstands the attack. He is flabbergasted to realize this new kind of power coursing through him, thanks to the gourd Yusin provided. However, he can also feel a new kind of crystal forming inside him. But it isn't wrong at all, because Xiao has had both crystals inside his body since birth. The reality is that both have been empty and inactive until now. The demon crystal was activated after his fight with Big Mouth a few days ago. Now, facing the deity has activated his other crystal as well. Yusin's gourd has filled this crystal with energy. While blocking the deity's attack, Xiao thinks of a way to handle the situation. Although he now has this new kind of energy that synchronizes with the deity's energy and helps him withstand attacks more effectively, the problem is that he can't attack back or summon his goblin club because his demon energy is completely drained. He realizes that this new kind of energy requires a different method to utilize it, one he doesn't yet know how to use. While dodging the deity's attacks, he grows increasingly tense, unsure of what to do next since sheer strength alone won't be enough to defeat him. Finally, he decides to throw this energy as a weapon to see what will happen. In the next moment, a summoned animal appears in front of him. The scene shifts to the TH Hotel, where one room is occupied by the Japanese shaman, Yushiro. He complains about wanting to eat something. She tells him dryly to go eat or dine out. He retorts that, thanks to her afternoon stunt, people are keeping a watch on them, and he can't dine out. So, they need to stick together if they want to go outside. She admits that it is because of her that she went to look for him. He asks about whom she is talking about. She tells him about the half-goblin with human blood who saved her. She adds that he is there to finish off the dark demons she had traced as well. The boy protests that the information doesn't match what they had told him. He checks the news, where people are talking about how they are going to catch the culprit. He immediately understands that they set Xiao up to save their faces. In this sense, they are not different from them. Besides, he understands his sister's concern about a person who saved her, but is now in danger. She can't do anything more as they are going to compete with the Korean shaman in the future because Japan and Korea were part of the Koryo dynasty 666 years ago. To the ancient royal family and the current government of Korea, these shamans are nothing but myths, so they can trust them now. But it's not enough for them to give the reins into their hands. At the end, he seriously deadpans that if these shamans prove themselves to be incompetent, there's a chance the government will ask for help from other countries, which means they will be their first priority. Not only them, but shamans worldwide are on edge because of this incident. So, they can't intervene in their matters because that would make them rivals if they do so. She truly understands what he is trying to say, and how the master also made her understand what it means to enter a different country. Because of the incident in the afternoon, she realizes that she can't summon her full power because of entering this country. He understands that she can sense these things better than him because of her being psychic. He asks whether she has used Raiju, which she confirms. Next morning, she decides to summon Raiju but is shocked to see that he doesn't appear at all. The scene flashes back to the fight with the goblin ancestor. Even though he was about to kill Yuzuru, Raiju also saw all of this and wanted to save his master. But without her order, he was helpless. When Yue intervened and attacked the Ishimi, Raiju was terrified to see it and rushed toward his master to be absorbed by her. But instead, he faced our dude with shaman energy and was absorbed by him. But Xiu, on the other hand, doesn't know how to summon him with his demon energy. Now, in the present, Raiju stands before his new master, who doesn't have a clue about what really happened. The deity is rushing toward him once again, while both the summon and master have no idea how this happened at all. But they can sense that their lives are bound to each other. Then he tries to pry his attack, but suddenly he finds something in his hand. Next moment, this thing turns into a sword, which he can't compare to the Goblin Club, but he can use what he has. Besides, while prying the attack of the deity, he also realizes that the deity is only good in technique, but in reality, he is stronger and faster than him. So, it is useless to use offense in this regard because the deity always reads his moves and attacks him in a way that makes it impossible to dodge his attack. So, he does what he can and stops dodging the attack, which stuns the female because she knows he can dodge his attack perfectly. Seeing him do this, the deity comments on how fascinating it is that he stopped attacking back, but now stops defending himself. But he warns him that he is not going to give him an opening. Xu tells him that it's the only answer he has for now. To see that the deity has taken his full form and lets his sword dance everywhere stuns our hero. It's not the attack he was ready to take and dodge at any cost. He doesn't have any method to counter it because this level surpasses any opponent he's faced so far. The deity rushes toward him to finish him off. Xu also knows the power difference but senses the flaw of the advent so far after facing numerous powerful foes until that time. He now understands that no matter how strong the deity is, he is limited by his vessel. The deity, on the other hand, understands that he is not waiting for the opening, but for the thunder to be absorbed by his vessel. So, the next moment, he punches Jaguang hard. Xu also knows this is his only way to defend himself. Jaguang finally lies on the ground, the deity inside him asking Xiu his reason for sparing his life. He answers that he doesn't need to do so, as things have already worked out in his favor. Besides, this deity is not in his original body, so he shouldn't say something like that when he's inside someone else's body. Though the deity calls him insolent, he seems truly impressed by him and bids him goodbye, promising to look forward to having another go with him. Then he disappears from Jaguang's body. Then the female shaman turns to him, while claiming that she doesn't have enough skill to fight with him, so she just gives up. However, our hero senses that this woman is lying, as she is stronger than her male counterpart. But he doesn't know why she has given up so easily. Before he can ask anything, Yusin interjects, furious at our hero for not heeding his warning and messing things up this morning. Now he's there, while he's a wanted man. The female shaman, meanwhile, is looking at them, not understanding how a shaman and a demon know each other. Xu apologizes for his rash decision, but Yusin scoffs, saying it doesn't make things okay. Then, he observes his surroundings, and turns to the female, conveying that whatever she is seeing is the truth, that they've been buddies since middle school, and he knew he was a half-goblin. He then gives testimony on his friend's behalf, stating that he is not someone who can harm anyone. But the female shaman doesn't accept it, as no matter what, Yusin was the head shaman, and it is not his right to pass judgment regarding it. Yusin cuts her off, saying that he knows he shouldn't associate with the demon, but regardless of the reason, he is going to resign as the head shaman of the shaman agency from this moment onward. She is flabbergasted to hear his declaration, but he says that it won't be much of a problem, because everyone pretends to be furious on the outside, but in reality, they will be relieved to have a head position empty, which they are heading for. Then, he holds the hilt of his sword, whining while asking the female that she should cut the act from now. If she breaks the barrier she is holding, then he won't harm her. Otherwise, she will leave him no choice but to fight with him. At that, she removes her mask and enlarges her part of the barrier. She says to him that she has done what he requested. All he has to do now is make one of the 3 shamans lift their part of the barrier. Then, he orders her to go ahead with her brother, as it wouldn't be wise for her to be seen with him after she has lifted the barrier without any protest. Then they both go their separate paths. On their way, Yusin drags Xiu along and informs him that he didn't particularly come here to save him, but he came because he was ordered to eliminate the demons that came inside the barrier and find his mother. Instead, he found some demons who wanted to save his mother and decided to cooperate with them. Then, Seo tries to say something, but Yusin cuts him off, saying they have very little time left, as they need to defeat one of the 3 head shamans, whose power is higher than the combined power of the siblings. While being asked, Yusin informs him that both of them are assistants, so they were sent because their combined power is equal to the head shamans. Meanwhile, Jagwang is quite furious and accuses his sister for their defeat. Yusin asks that they are lucky she didn't sense his condition and gave up. Siu asks about his condition. Instead of answering him directly, Yusin asks him to give him one of the remaining tricolor gourds, which he does. Then Yusin consumes the energy of the gourd. Afterwards, he turns to Seo and briefs him about his next course of action. From now on, they will head to the head shaman, with whom Seolhwa must be fighting. While Solmi is protecting his mother, he tells Seo to join his mother with Solmi, while he joins the fight with Seolhwa. Therefore, as soon as the barrier is lifted, all 3 of them need to go out without wasting time. Siu, on the other hand, doesn't want to leave Seolhwa and Yusin alone, but doesn't protest at all because he knows he's delusional to think like that. Yusin reminds him that he wasn't using half of his power when they were fighting, so he demands him to look at him, bursting with shaman energy. Siu answers him, thinking that he shouldn't doubt Yusin as his friend, who is concerned about him. But at this moment, suddenly, Yusin rushes to him with a sword unleashed in his hand and attacks someone behind him. There is a bulky shaman who is quite pleased to see Yusin side with the demons. He even expresses that he is looking forward to seeing Yusin's father's shocked expression when he finds out about this. Yusin seems terrified to see this person as his opponent. This person again asks him if he wants to change his mind because he's quite fond of him, as he is different from the rest of his family. He even adds that he will overlook the incident and make the siblings not reveal his change of side if he changes his mind. All he needs to do is catch Seo and forget about resigning. At the end, he reminds him about his mother as well. Yusin now calls this person Jaegeon, who is his uncle, and refuses his offer, because he is already planning on leaving his home anyway, because he doesn't like how things are running there. Then both of them are ready to fight each other. Without turning to him, Yusin informs him of the location of his mother, who is now on the rooftop, so she'll be able to fly out from there when the barrier is lifted. He emphasizes that Seo should be with his mother. With that, despite being emotional for his friend, he rushes away from there. Meanwhile, his uncle understands Yusin's friendship with Seo. Yusin sarcastically remarks that this is how strange this world is. However, he's not calling him a fool. His uncle quips that he doesn't think it's foolish to save his friend. Basically, head shamans are quite powerful, as there are only 7 of them in the shaman agency, and they have enough power to go against spirit-level demons. Not only this, their human and martial arts power make them equivalent to a military brigade. That is the reason Jaegeon, who is also a head shaman, doesn't want to kill one of the heads. So, to that end, he promises to make this kill quick to keep Yusin's body intact.
Never had humanity encountered creatures as terrifying as these, pouring in from another dimension. They flooded the cities, and even nuclear explosions, capable of obliterating entire regions, seemed like nothing more than bonfires for them to dance around while spreading destruction. People called them calamities, a grim reminder of how hope was rapidly slipping away. Just when humanity was beginning to accept its doomed fate, they appeared, the 13 Zodiac Saints. Initially, 12 individuals were granted powers by the absolute gods to combat the monstrous calamities. But one day, out of nowhere, a 13th emerged. He had no blessings from any gods, yet he was overwhelmingly powerful. This new saint joined the Zodiac Saints on a mission to the Demon Tower to slay Crimson Eye, the leader of the endless calamities. However, when the mission ended, only 12 saints returned. The 13th had vanished. Humanity mourned his supposed sacrifice, and his comrades wept before the media. But it was all a lie. He had sacrificed himself to kill Schwann Scarlet Eye, but only because his comrades had abandoned him at his weakest. A sudden sword to his back, delivered by one of his teammates, sent him plummeting into the abyss. Left helpless, the demon stared at him with wide eyes as he lay there, his left arm severed and his right too drained to lift. But he refused to die. Clenching a knife in his teeth to bear the pain, he forced himself back up. Rejecting death and fueled by hatred, he fought tirelessly, determined to return and exact revenge on the scum who had betrayed him. Will he ever escape the Demon Tower? Before Leon was abandoned there, he shared a fried chicken meal with Tak Su at a local joint. The food had just been served, still steaming, when Tak Su, staring intently at his friend, said in a grave tone, "You're going to die tomorrow." "What? Oh, Tak Su, why do you want me dead so badly?" Leon quipped, laughing as he held a drumstick in each hand. "Jealous because I'm eating 2 drumsticks at once, huh?" The restaurant's lights illuminated Leon's scarred face under his hood. His left eye was milky white, blinded, and a deep brown scar marked a patch where no hair grew, proof of a brutal battle long ago. Hugo, irked, growled at the sound of his own rustic name. "Tak Su! How many times have I told you to use my stage name? It sounds cooler." But Leon, happily munching his chicken, only teased him more. Clicking his tongue, Leon replied, "Stop overthinking it. I'm not that easy to kill, buddy. The number of calamities you and your 12 saint buddies have slain, combined and squared, doesn't even equal a tenth of what I've taken down. So drop that crazy idea." Despite his worry, Hugo fell silent. How could he argue against logic like that? The Demon Tower, after all, was home to the deadliest calamities and humanity's gravest threat. It had all begun on the last day of the 20th century when the calamities had suddenly appeared, nearly driving humanity to extinction with their immense power. In humanity's darkest hour, 12 beings claiming to be divine gods had come forth, granting powers to 12 chosen individuals to combat the threat. 12, a perfect, even number. Then a 13th appeared. This one wasn't chosen by any god, nor was he blessed, yet he was unimaginably powerful. To humanity, the number 13 was unlucky, but this man embodied a demon hunter's strength. Without divine blessings, his power surpassed all 12 Zodiac Saints combined. He was so strong that he became a thorn in their side, someone the Saints were constantly wary of. Can you guess who that might be? The dark-looking protagonist with scars, holding 2 drumsticks at the story's start? Perhaps you've already figured it out. The blind left eye and bald patch leave no doubt, it's Leon. After seeing Leon take down enough calamities for the group to advance safely, Hugo cheerfully walked over to thank him. But Leon, seated on a rock, glanced up and retorted, "Instead of wasting breath, why don't you buy me fried chicken for 5 years? Wouldn't that be more practical?" Hugo, unfazed by the cost but irritated by the use of his old name, protested. Yet Leon refused to stop calling him that. Some things never changed, like his insistence on the nickname. While the two bickered, 2 other Zodiac Saints grinned with delight. "If we take down Crimson Eye today, we're going to be filthy rich," one chubby saint exclaimed, laughing. "Of course," he added, "it's the strongest calamity. Just a rough estimate, and we're looking at 1,000 billion. Sitting nearby, Leon chimed in, "Instead of splurging on mansions and fancy cars, maybe you should think about retiring in Hawaii and living it up. So many nations have thrown everything they've got at Crimson Eye, and here you are, risking it all for money. You think you're smarter than a duck, huh?" The chubby saint curled his lips into a smug grin. Don't need financial advice from you, Leon. Sarcastically, he added, even you're scrambling for money to fix that wrecked face and body, so don't act high and mighty. Leon bore their mockery in silence, thinking it wasn't worth wasting words on them. He wished they'd just leave him alone. Yet as they turned back, they chuckled mockingly. Here's a money-making tip: next time, don't rush in when called. Wait until there are more casualties, that way, you'll hear more ding-ding notifications of funds rolling in. Leon sighed, exasperated. What kind of saints were these scumbags supposed to be? Once Crimson Eye was dealt with, he was cutting ties with them for good. The group finally reached a cave with jagged stalactites hanging from above. The so-called saints froze, their faces pale with terror. This is, they stammered, craning their necks to see the towering final boss, Crimson Eye, of the Demon Tower. The beast was colossal, with horns sprouting all over its head. The air around it was suffocatingly hot. Just its presence alone made the atmosphere unbearably heavy, even for someone as strong as Leon. Suddenly, the demon let out a thunderous roar that shook the cave violently. The ground split apart, spewing lava. Startled, Leon leaped back, shielding himself as the fissure widened, revealing a raging river of molten fire. Beneath the molten stream, lava erupted from the earth, shooting straight into the sky. The so-called saints couldn't endure the searing heat, screaming in agony as it scorched them. The lava burst through the demon tower like a fiery geyser, illuminating the vast sky with its fiery glow. The jets of molten rock resembled fireworks, a mocking welcome to the fools who dared to venture into hell. The scorching heat and thick dust filled the air, leaving the saints trembling with fear as their wide eyes fixated on the boiling lava creeping dangerously close to their feet. The eruption revealed a massive volcanic crater, separating the Demon King from the intruders. Amid the swirling smoke, Crimson Eye sat nonchalantly on its throne, the smoke curling around its enormous frame. Its glowing eyes radiated malice, and a smug grin spread across its monstrous face. The sight of the Demon King's overwhelming presence left one of the female saints trembling uncontrollably. Her eyes bulged in terror as she stammered, run." It took a moment for her to gather the strength to scream, "Run now." Panic overtook the group as they turned tail and fled, shouting that there was no way to face such a horrifying beast. Yet, these cowards dared to call themselves divine beings. John stood firm, watching them scurry like beaten dogs, and let out a long, weary sigh. Tightening his grip on his sword's hilt, he faced the monstrous figure alone, undeterred. Power surged through his body, unyielding and immense. No matter what happened, even if the sky itself fell, the one to slay Crimson Eye would be none other than Leon. With that resolve, he launched himself forward with such force that the ground beneath him cracked and exploded. Charging straight at the Demon King, he prepared for the ultimate life-or-death battle. That was the first part of the story the survivors would recount. As for what happened afterward, no one knew. No one knew how Legion had been betrayed by his comrades, leading to his dire fate. How long had it been? Leon couldn't remember anymore. He didn't know how much the outside world had changed or if time passed differently inside the Demon Tower. Just thinking about it made his head throb. Now, only one thought consumed his mind: to kill every last demon within the tower. After all, the tower was a sinister trap, designed to endlessly summon calamity beasts. Did those wretched saints believe this would be enough to kill him? They were wrong. Despite losing an arm and being drenched in blood, teetering on the brink of death, Leon was determined to survive and escape. When that day came, he swore he would sever the heads of every single one of those traitors. Just wait. He would endure, biting down on his blade until his mouth bled, his eyes fixed wide open, fueled by the desire for revenge. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 20 years had gone by. A calamity beast now lay sprawled on the ground before him, trembling in terror. "How did you make it all the way here?" it stammered. A low, growling voice responded, "You're the last one." The two-horned beast backed away in fear, crying out, Someone save me." Leon scoffed. "Save you? Get real. If I said you're the last one, who else do you think could come to your rescue?" He stomped down with his massive foot, crushing the beast in a single blow. Blood splattered as the creature fell lifeless to the ground. "Is it finally over?" Leon muttered, his voice weary. The scruffy, bearded man standing there, bruised and battered, was none other than Leon himself. He had hoped that wiping out every demon would lead to an easy escape, but no. Suddenly, the cave shook violently, and rocks began raining down. Could this be the way out? Leon wondered aloud, but his thought was cut short as a massive boulder slammed into his head, knocking him unconscious and burying him under a pile of rubble. Outside, beneath a clear blue sky, the world lay in ruins. Amid the desolation, a frantic scream pierced the air. "Run! Quick!" Two young men sprinted like their lives depended on it. Today was supposed to be a safe day, which was why they had dared to venture outside. Who would have thought they'd encounter not a pack of girls, but 3 high-level calamity wolves instead? Damn it! We're done for, the black-haired boy half laughed, half cried in panic. I knew I should have trusted my gut. I foresaw this disaster, and yet here we are. Behind them, one of the wolves lunged, landing between the two boys and scaring them so badly they nearly wet themselves. The black-haired boy slammed his fist into the ground in frustration. Damn it all. The wolves surrounded them on all sides. There was no escape, only death. Gritting his teeth in rage, the boy muttered, if Leon had survived and escaped the demon tower, these mutts wouldn't even be a problem. As if on cue, the demon tower's door suddenly swung open. The two boys froze in disbelief as a blinding light flared, followed by a massive explosion that shook the entire city with overwhelming force. They struggled to remain on their feet as the ground quaked beneath them. When the tremors finally ceased, the demon tower was gone, replaced by a gaping crater. Smoke rose from the ruins, and the two boys, bewildered and battered, crawled out of the rubble. One of them pointed, trembling, at the crater. "Jimin, there's someone there." The other boy followed his gaze. A muscular, sinewy arm emerged from the smoke, definitely not a monster. A tall, imposing figure appeared, silhouetted against the fiery wasteland. Slamming his fists together, the man growled, his voice seething with anger. "How dare you stab me in the back and throw me into that trap, you bastard dogs!" Leon had re-emerged in the real world, his prime muscular physique intact, cursing furiously at the traitors who had lured him into that infernal trap years ago. The bitterness of betrayal and the torment he endured in the demon tower had fused into a terrifying rage. "You're all dead meat, you filthy saints," he roared, his eyes blazing with vengeance, promising to make them feel the depths of despair. Nearby, the sound of shifting debris and falling rubble kept two boys hidden and on edge. As they peeked out, they were struck with awe watching the calamity beasts get utterly demolished. One was launched into the air with an uppercut, while another had its head crushed underfoot. "Holy crap, this can't be real," one whispered in disbelief. High-level players struggled against orange-tier beasts, yet this man was taking them down effortlessly. Laughing heartily, Leon gripped a beast's head, his foot planted firmly on the corpses of its kin. His gaze wandered and locked onto some hidden silhouettes nearby. In a flash, he vanished, leaving the boys blinking in confusion. Seconds later, he dropped down, obliterating their hiding spot and scaring them senseless. Why are you attacking us?" Jim stammered, stumbling backward, while Aussie burst into tears. Leon's expression softened upon realizing they were just humans. Their sneaky behavior had made him mistake them for monsters. With the area seemingly cleared, Leon relaxed as the boys sighed in relief and began whispering about him. Jim toyed with the idea of selling their encounter to a tabloid, but Aussie shut him down. "Do you even realize what kind of place that tower is? Nobody could come out alive," Aussie exclaimed. As they debated, Leon started to approach but froze when the boys suddenly recoiled in terror. Behind him, a remaining calamity beast, its eyes glowing red and saliva dripping, snarled at the man who had slaughtered its pack. The boys screamed in panic, tears and snot streaming down their faces. They shouted for Leon to run, but he just grinned. The beast's eyes flared as it gathered energy, preparing to unleash a fiery attack. Jim and Aussie braced themselves, gritting their teeth as flames engulfed the area. Yet, when the smoke and fire began to clear, the boys found themselves unharmed. Standing before them was Leon, shielding them with a skill. Did he protect us?" they stammered, wide-eyed with astonishment. Suddenly, Leon let out a mocking laugh. "What a dumb blockhead," he taunted. Energy surged through his body as he leapt into the air. With a clenched fist, he dove down like a missile, shouting, "If you're just a mutt, sit." His punch shattered the ground, leaving the boys gaping in disbelief. The wolf leader collapsed, lifeless, its massive body sprawled out. Leon landed lightly and glanced back. "Hey, you two," he barked. Startled, the boys nearly jumped out of their skins. "Go," Leon ordered, his intense aura sending shivers down their spines. "Go where?" one stammered. Leon's fierce demeanor suddenly broke into a grin. "To get me some food, obviously." The tension dissolved into an awkward silence as Leon scratched his head, chuckling. The boys were left speechless. Why couldn't he just say that earlier instead of scaring us half to death? Hours later, they sat in a restaurant. A green-shirted waiter slammed a massive bowl onto their table. The two boys stared at the bill, pale as ghosts. "How can anyone eat this much?" they groaned. It was enough food for 120 people. Leon, sitting behind a mountain of empty dishes, patted his bloated stomach. "I held back, he grumbled. "You promised to repay me for saving your lives." As he casually ordered another bowl of noodles, Aussie finally snapped. "Enough already. Humans have limits." Jim, trying to steer the conversation, asked, "Just who are you? A disciple? A divine cadre captain? What were you doing near the tower?" Leon shrugged. "Disciple? Divine? I just walked out of the tower," he replied nonchalantly before changing the subject, asking about the boys. He sensed magical energy from Jim, who puffed up proudly. "He's a disciple," Aussie explained. "He awakened with the blessing of a god." Mentioning gods immediately soured Leon's mood. "Why would I serve those bastards?" he snapped. But then he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a spoon and froze. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, leaping up. His smooth, flawless skin wasn't the face he remembered. He shot to his feet, demanding a mirror. A frightened waitress pointed across the room. Leon rushed over, tearing off his shirt. Sure, his physique was impressive, but stripping in a public restaurant? Really? In front of the mirror, Leon stared in shock. His muscular body was free of scars, wounds that were once impossible to heal completely gone. Even his severed left arm had been restored. As he admired his arm, a faint mark began to appear. Gradually, a small snake emerged from the faint mark on Leon's arm, fully manifesting within moments. As the serpent's shape became clear, a searing pain shot through his arm, forcing Leon to grit his teeth and endure. A powerful surge of energy erupted within him, and suddenly, a system message appeared. "You have experienced death and achieved the impossible. Your abilities will be transferred to a new body. All achievements from the tower have been converted into experience points. You have generated a zodiac skill. All unique skills and traits have been transferred and evolved. Additionally, you now possess the power of the Ophiuchus constellation." Struggling to control the torrent of energy within him, Leon closed his eyes and drifted into an abyss. When he opened them again, he found himself floating in a vast galaxy, face to face with the glowing red eyes of an enormous serpent. The massive creature coiled its body before bringing its head close to him. Leon's expression was a mix of shock and disbelief as his hands, drawn by an invisible force, touched the serpent's head. The point of contact glowed brilliantly, as if the entire universe was blessing him. In an instant, the vision vanished, leaving Leon sitting on the ground, drenched in sweat. He couldn't tell if what he'd experienced was real or just a vivid dream. "Hey, Leon. Are you okay?" Jim's sudden voice snapped him back to reality. Disoriented, Leon asked if Jim had seen a gunt snake. "A snake? Nope. But I did see you stripping and jumping around in front of the mirror," Jim replied. Leon waved him off, muttering to himself, "Why can't anyone else see it?" Watching Leon talk to his hand, Jim and Aussie exchanged worried glances, wondering if their savior might be unhinged. Still bewildered, Leon was startled by a notification that appeared before him, congratulating him on becoming the owner of Ophiuchus. A flood of information followed, listing new titles like 13th Seat of the Gods, Owner of Ophiuchus, and various skills, which began activating. One skill in particular, Super Regeneration, caught his attention. It allowed him to heal any injury but at the cost of having his durability for 32 hours. Finally, Leon understood that this new body was a result of the skill, though he wondered why none of the saints had ever mentioned such a phenomenon. Furthermore, he couldn't sense the presence of any gods. Whatever. None of that mattered to Leon. His body was healed, and that was enough. All he cared about now was exacting revenge on the backstabbing hypocrites and saints who left him to rot in the demon tower. The thought of making them suffer ignited a bloodlust so intense that even Jim and Aussie shivered in fear. Meanwhile, at the ruins of the demon tower, police had cordoned off the area. Investigators speculated about the fortress's mysterious collapse, suspecting it was the work of either Leon's followers or rebellious disciples. Disciples? A skinny officer scoffed. Look at those calamity wolves. Even high-ranking saints would struggle against them. No way some random fanatics caused this. The chubby officer shuddered. Do you think Leon might really be back? Who knows, the skinny officer muttered. But we'll find out soon enough. In the city's green zone, inside a towering building bustling with reporters, cameras rolled as journalists bombarded questions about the tower's collapse. They demanded to know if the 13th saint, Leon, had truly returned. Yang Wei, the Saint of Aries and spokesperson for the event, grew visibly irritated. Leaning into the microphone, he snapped, "No comment," before storming off, leaving the reporters in an uproar. As a Rolls-Royce sped through the streets, Yang Wei seethed in the back seat, crushing his sunglasses in frustration. Why are those vultures so obsessed with him? He spat. His anger stemmed from being overshadowed. No one cared about his achievements. The possibility of Leon's return only stoked his rage further. That Scarface bastard? Are they seriously claiming he survived 20 years in that tower? Impossible. Yang Wei growled, grinding his teeth. The tower had been teeming with thousands of high-level demons and elite monsters. Surviving Crimson Eye had been considered a miracle. He didn't even have divine blessings like me. Yang Wei sneered, though doubt crept into his mind. What if Leon had survived? His brow furrowed as he exhaled a puff of smoke, trying to suppress his frustration. Suddenly, his temper flared again, and he shouted, "If I have to, I'll just kill him again." Meanwhile, Li Gun, now fully fed and satisfied, grinned mischievously as he stared at his phone. Muttering to himself, he mused, "Should I take out that bastard first?" Under the same sky, thousands of miles away at a private airport in England, a sleek jet had just landed. The moment polished leather shoes appeared on the stairs, the airport staff bowed in unison. "It is an honor to welcome one of the 12 Zodiac Saints," they chorused, their voices tinged with reverence. Descending the steps was Hugo Otter, the Saint of Sagittarius. His blonde hair glinted in the sunlight, and his hands were casually tucked into his pockets as he made his way to a waiting luxury car. The moment Hugo was out of sight, the staff erupted into hushed, fanboyish whispers. As expected of a saint, he's so dignified, one guard gushed. "That's what you call a real icon," another added, visibly impressed. The luxury car sped towards the Prime Minister's residence, but Hugo's mind was elsewhere. His gaze was fixed on the horizon until his phone buzzed, pulling him back to reality. "Damn reporters," he muttered, frowning. For days, rumors of Leon's survival had plagued him, and the incessant calls only served to annoy him further. Glancing at the unknown number on his screen, Hugo slammed his fist against the armrest. It's been over 20 years. How could he still be alive? He silenced the device, trying to push away the unwelcome thoughts. His memories betrayed him, dragging him back to the past. He vividly recalled warning Gun about his death before the mission to conquer the Demon Tower. But Gun had only laughed while devouring fried chicken. "Why are you so hellbent on me dying?" Gun had teased, brushing off Hugo's concerns. During the mission, Hugo had been stationed outside the tower, battling calamity beasts as per Gun's orders. He had prayed fervently that his grim prophecy would be wrong, but when the other saints returned without Gun, yet triumphantly bearing Crimson Eye's severed head, his hopes were dashed. The saints were hailed as heroes, showered with power and wealth, while Gun's absence was buried under celebrations. Hugo, meanwhile, was confined to a hospital bed, demanding a search mission. His pleas fell on deaf ears. Among the many dismissive voices, the one that lingered was Malling, the Saint of Cancer. The man had smugly told Hugo that sending a search party was pointless. If Gun had been strong, he would have survived, and if not, Hugo would only waste his life trying to find him. "We can't afford to lose another constellation," Malling had said with a smirk, leaving Hugo seething. For 20 years, Hugo clung to a sliver of hope, even as logic told him otherwise. Yet, deep down, he never forgot Gunn's defiant spirit. The driver's voice snapped Hugo out of his reverie. The Prime Minister is on the line. Suppressing his emotions, Hugo took the call, already exasperated. The Prime Minister immediately inquired about the tower's collapse. Hugo rolled his eyes. First reporters, now you? Gunn is dead. That incident is probably some fanatic playing hero. However, the Prime Minister's tone shifted. With palpable tension, he mentioned a strange phone call. What call? Hugo demanded, sitting up straighter. The Prime Minister revealed that the call had come through an exclusive line, one that hadn't been active for decades. A line belonging to Lee Gunn. Hugo's world stopped. His heart pounded as the realization sank in. Pounding his fists against the seat, he shouted, "Stop the car." The screeching halt jolted him back into action. Grabbing his phone, he noticed 30 missed calls and a single voicemail. With trembling hands, he hit play. "Hey, Otter. I'm coming for you. And I'm going to kill you. Good luck." The voice was unmistakable. The laid-back tone sent chills down Hugo's spine. His hand shook as he whispered, "Gunn? Is that really you?" Forgetting the Prime Minister and his business trip, Hugo barked at the driver to take him back to the airport. Nothing mattered now except finding Gunn. Back in Korea, Gunn sat in a small restaurant, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "Looks like Otter grew up. Finally ignoring my calls, huh?" he joked, tossing his phone on the table. Jim chuckled nervously, trying to lighten the mood. He showed Gunn how to use the internet to check trending topics. Gunn's eyes widened as he saw his name dominating the news, articles speculating about his survival. Finally, some recognition, Gunn said, elated. But his joy was short-lived. A barrage of hate comments flooded in, labeling him as useless and crediting the Saints with taking down Crimson Eye. Slamming his fist on the table, Gunn growled, "Useless?" They were the ones who chickened out and ran away. The fire in his eyes burned brighter. "Fine," he muttered. "If the world wants to hate me, let them. I'll remind them who I am." Gunn, his rage simmering, tightened his grip on the phone until Jim yelped, "Hey, bro, easy with the phone. It's mine." The fury in Gunn's eyes was palpable as he muttered, "I'm the one who took down Red Eye, you brainless fools." Yet, almost as quickly, his anger dissipated. No point wasting energy on idiots, he thought, scrolling further through the articles. But his frustration surged anew when he stumbled upon a headline about his will. Clicking it revealed an infuriating twist. Instead of his wealth funding the orphanage and scholarship programs as he had intended, the so-called Saints, all but Hugo, had seized his assets, claiming he had left everything to them in his final wishes. "Damn those bastards!" Gunn bellowed, crushing the phone in his hand. Jim, watching in horror, collapsed in despair. "My phone. It's not even fully paid off," he wailed, cradling the shattered remains. Gunn, barely registering Jim's grief, muttered, "Goodbye, my beloved phone. What a tragic end." He sighed, tears of frustration brimming in his eyes. Depression sank in as Gunn reflected on his predicament. He wanted to make a grand comeback, but 20 years had changed his appearance too much. "If I speak up now, no one will believe me. They'll probably lock me in an asylum," he thought grimly. Deciding to bide his time, he resolved to confront the Saints one by one. Meanwhile, Jim was still lamenting the death of his phone when Gunn suddenly tensed. The system's alert flashed in his mind, "You're being watched?" Gunn sensed a familiar stench. Making an excuse to step outside, he scouted the area, his flip-flops slapping against the pavement. His eyes narrowed as he spotted a bizarre sight, a flock of floating goat heads drifting toward him. Ares' guardian spirits? Controlled by the absolute gods? What are they doing here? The system chimed in, demanding offerings of fine delicacies. The absolute gods have grown weaker. Weak, are they? Damn it, what kind of nonsense is this? Gunn spat, his anger igniting. He despised corruption, especially from beings who acted like almighty deities while looting from others. As he stormed toward the goat heads, he overheard someone muttering, "Damn it, it's that lunatic Leon again." Turning, he spotted a pair of youths bad-mouthing his name. Irritated, Gunn paused. The sunlight glinted off their Gemini-emblazoned badges, and Jim's eyes widened in fear. "Those are A-rank Gemini members," Jim whispered urgently. Don't mess with them, Gun. Ignoring Jim, Gun stood silently, blocking their path. The chubby one sneered, "What are you staring at, loser? Get lost." When Gun didn't move, the guy took a drag of his cigarette and blew smoke in his face. "You mad, huh? If you're mad, hit me," he taunted, leaning closer. His girlfriend tried to stop him, fearing not a fight but the embarrassment of her boyfriend backing down. As they walked away, they tossed out one last insult, "Trash." Probably one of those loser fans of Leon. Gun's fists clenched, his ears burning from their mockery. Jim, panicking, begged, "Gun, don't do it. They'll destroy us." But Gun's patience snapped. "Hey, you filthy maggots," he roared, his fiery aura erupting. The pair turned, snarling. "Who are you calling maggots?" Gun smirked. "I'm calling you two a perfect pair of maggots." The chubby guy stormed toward Gun. "Say that again, I dare you." Calmly, Gun raised his hand and flicked him. The man soared dozens of meters through the air, crashing into the ground and leaving a crater of rubble. His girlfriend screamed in terror, while bystanders gawked in disbelief. "Weaklings," Gun muttered, unfazed by the chaos. When the girl attempted a sneak attack, Gun caught her effortlessly. Another flick sent her tumbling alongside her boyfriend. "Pathetic," he said coldly. Jim, trembling, cried, "How could you use your powers so openly? Aren't you afraid the police will come after you?" Gun shrugged. "What are you talking about? You think I used my powers on those weaklings? If I had, they'd be dead already." The bystanders gawked, their mouths agape. He just flicked two A-rank disciples like flies. Ignoring the commotion, Gun crouched beside the unconscious chubby man and yanked a necklace from his neck. His eyes widened. A holy relic? How could a thug like this have something so valuable? He examined the relic, memories stirring. These were supposed to be reserved for the saints. What happened to limited edition? Turning the relic over in his hand, Gun's smirk returned. "Looks like I've got another reason to clean up this mess." Jim was shocked by how oblivious this guy was and broke it down for him in simple terms. Humanity had nearly been wiped out when the calamities appeared decades ago. The only reason people were still alive was due to the divine gods and the saints they selected. However, 12 saints alone couldn't protect the entire world, so they gathered survivors and formed the Holy Orders. Those who awakened were granted powers by the saints and became known as disciples, like Jim. From there, a ranking system was established. At the top were the saints, followed by SS-ranked 10 stars who were considered candidates for sainthood. Below them were S-ranked Holy Order captains, and from rank downwards, everyone was simply called a disciple. The divine God stood above all, drawing power from the unwavering faith of their disciples. To maintain this, they organized various competitions to recruit more people into the Holy Orders. Jim summed it up quickly and added that the chosen disciples were gifted by the divine gods. Hearing this, Gun thought to himself about what had happened during the 20 years he was gone. Jim urgently pointed to the sky, not cursing anyone but drawing attention to the guardian spirits gathering around Gun. The system notified him that among them were the spirits of prosperity and greed from Ares, urging him to kill the two for the thrill of bloodshed in exchange for a gift. The sight of them gave Gun a headache. There was nothing worse than attracting the attention of guardian spirits. Ignoring their commands was as good as rejecting the divine, inviting their wrath. Just as Jim was about to advise him to comply, Gun let out a sinister chuckle. He looked up, his eyes devoid of amusement, filled only with irritation and anger. A moment ago, he had wondered why Yang W's followers were here, and now it all made sense. They wanted to hoard the good stuff for themselves. Muttering curses, Gun stomped hard on the ground, creating a shockwave that blew the guardian spirits away. Despite their boasts, they couldn't stand against his overwhelming power. Gun's single stomp cleared every guardian spirit in the area, restoring the clear blue sky. Jim peeked through his fingers, utterly dumbfounded, watching Gun's trademark grin. Above, the spirits had scattered entirely, leaving the sky its original color. Jim realized this scruffy guy wasn't ordinary. Suddenly, Gun called out Jim's full name and pointed at the frothing fat guy. "Did you say this guy is a Gemini disciple?" he asked. Jim confirmed, explaining that the guild was massive and dangerous, filled with high-ranking members no one dared cross. Out of nowhere, Gun asked a strange question. "They've got a lot of money, don't they?" Jim was about to respond when he saw Gun's villainous grin. Eyeing the luxurious gear the man was wearing, Gun muttered, "Jackpot." Squatting down, he yanked off the man's cardigan, humming a tune about not needing to spend money on clothes anymore. After 2 decades in the Demon Tower, living like a wild-haired ape, Even a fresh haircut earned a thumbs up from Jim, who complimented his sharp look, leaving Gun genuinely embarrassed. Back in the day, even as the 13th Saint, Gun's powers backfired, and gusts of wind would scatter his hair, making him look like a balding uncle. Now, with stylish hair resembling an idol's, Gun felt elated. Suddenly, a buzzing sound drew his attention. Annoyed, he spotted a strange bug, a mix between a fly and a mosquito. Gun hated insects, so he crushed it barehanded and flicked it away casually as Jim watched in awe. However, more bugs began swarming, their relentless buzzing testing Gun's patience. Jim suggested they might be attracted to his scent, but Gun dismissed the theory, scanning the area for the source. His eyes landed on a gaudy trinket on a shelf, which he pointed out as the culprit. "That goddess statue," he said, claiming it was cursed and attracting calamities. Jim, almost in tears, defended it, saying he had received it directly from Saint Ares. Suddenly, a gust of wind sliced through the air, splitting the statue in half. Gun acted like he had touched something filthy, ignoring Jim's heartbreak over the shattered artifact. Treating it as trash, Gun began inspecting other items. He identified a music box as a spy tool, a clock as a calamity lure, and uncovered more cursed objects hidden in the house. Realizing these items were sold to unsuspecting people to exploit them, Gun's anger boiled. Veins throbbed on his forehead as he roared for Jim to throw them all away. His fury was so intense that Jim didn't dare interfere. Outside, Gun's shouts could be heard clearly. Just as he was about to smash a cursed clock, the door swung open. In walked a red-haired boy with an annoyed expression. Despite being in someone else's house, he boldly asked, "Who the hell are you?" Jim quickly adopted a placating tone and said, "You called for Sanjay to come back, right?" But Sanjay didn't respond to him. Instead, he caught only John's rude question, his face darkening as he shot back, "Who am I? I'm the owner of this house." Sanjay's entire body began to emit a blue aura, his expression hardening as he prepared to defend his home. John, in turn, made a sound of realization, acknowledging it was perfectly reasonable for a homeowner to be in their own house. Around them, broken furniture was strewn about, making the scene look disturbingly like the aftermath of a destructive confrontation. Meanwhile, at the White Ram Order of Yang Wei, the shrill cries of a fat man echoed. Yang Wei's face turned pale as he received news that a guardian spirit in Korea had vanished. His subordinates confirmed the report, adding that the southern branch of the White Ram Order in Korea was in utter disarray. Yang Wei immediately sensed something was amiss. Such an event was unprecedented, no one would dare drive away guardian spirits, who were servants of the divine gods. Who could be audacious enough to do such a thing? Pointing to one of his subordinates, he ordered them to contact the other saints to assess the situation. As he was preparing to leave, another piece of information reached him. Hugo, the Sagittarius, was not responding. At first, Yang Wei didn't care much since Hugo was in the UK, and it wasn't unusual for him to be unreachable. But when his subordinate hesitated and revealed that Hugo had just arrived in the UK before leaving again, Yang Wei's interest was piqued. "Where did he go?" he asked. Upon hearing that Hugo's destination was also Korea, Yang Wei paused, deep in thought. Was it merely a coincidence, or was there a deeper reason? Hugo had been Leon's closest friend, and ever since Leon's entombment in the Demon Tower, he had rarely returned to Korea. Could it be linked to the recent rumors of Leon still being alive? If Hugo was merely verifying those rumors, Yang Wei wasn't too concerned. But if that scarred, long-haired man had indeed survived and returned, it could spell trouble. Yang Wei grabbed a nearby ornate candlestick and hurled it at his subordinate, venting his frustration. The man barely dodged in time. "Investigate thoroughly," Yang Wei demanded. "Anything else? Speak now." His subordinate, trembling in fear, reported further. A Gemini disciple had been found unconscious near the site of the guardian spirit's disappearance, stripped down to his underwear and lying on a cracked road. Witnesses claimed he had fought a handsome man. "Handsome?" Yang Wei muttered, narrowing his eyes. The idea of Leon crossed his mind but was quickly dismissed. Leon was scarred, half-blind, and partially bald, it couldn't be him. Still, the series of events felt too coincidental: Leon's rumored return, Yang Wei's failure to conquer the Spider Queen, and the growing threats to his position. Unwilling to leave matters to chance, Yang Wei ordered his private jet prepared. When his subordinate hesitantly asked if he was going himself, Yang Wei snapped, "That's right." He no longer trusted his underlings to handle the situation. Throwing on his coat, he grabbed a cigar and took a few henchmen, heading to Korea to see things for himself. That night, at a Gemini-affiliated hospital, the steady beep of a machine hooked up to an unconscious figure was interrupted by the furious roar of an elderly man. "Who did this? Who left my grandson in this state?" he bellowed. His grandson had been beaten, stripped, and left unconscious, and no one knew who was responsible. The old man pointed at a man in a white suit leaning against the wall and demanded answers. The suited man, Gemini's S-rank disciple, Minon Permafrost, gave a standard reply: "Don't worry, the Gemini Holy Order has sent me to handle this." Back at Sanjay's house, Sanjay seethed. "Did you meet this guy in the Demon Tower?" he demanded. "And now he's smashing things because he claims everything is cursed?" John, however, didn't look like someone who needed to belong to a guild. Instead, he flashed a mischievous grin that left Sanjay speechless. Still fuming, Sanjay pressed further. "Which divine god do you follow?" Gun smirked. "They should follow me, not the other way around." His flippant response caused the veins in Sanjay's forehead to bulge. After a string of nonsensical answers, Sanjay finally asked, "What's your name?" "Lee Gun," Gun said casually, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Sanjay exploded with rage, accusing Gun of impersonating his lord, Leon. Overcome with fury, he unleashed all his magic power, causing a system alert to flash in John's vision. Gun coolly pointed out, "You're about to burn down the house." Then, activating his Gaze of a God ability, he analyzed Sanjay's A-rank power, his Punisher title, and his combined S-rank skill, which burning, with the A-rank seal of Perpetual Snow insignia. As always, Gun was thorough. Gun analyzed SJ's personality, a stubborn fanatic with a genius-level intellect. Smirking, he thought, "This kid's impressive, wielding such high-level summoning spells at his age. A real prodigy, huh?" At the moment, SJ was even focusing his energy on the statue behind him, ready to blow up the entire apartment building. Jim, on the verge of panicking, yelled, "Run for your life, bro. Sanjay is an A-rank Gemini disciple. Don't mess with his idol, Leon." Sanjay tilted his head toward Jim and warned, "Get out now, or you'll die along with him. You can mess with anyone, but don't you dare use my idol's name." Suddenly, Gun appeared right behind Sanjay, posing with his hand in a rock never die gesture and grinning mischievously. Sanjay spun around in shock, and before he could react, Gun flicked him straight into the wall. "Well, that works too," Gun said, thinking it was better than letting the maniac burn down the building. "Where else would I shower and rest?" Jim wasn't worried about the house anymore, he just hoped Sanjay wouldn't die. John's twisted grin stayed plastered on his face, only doubling Jim's anxiety. "You said it wasn't a big deal, so why is Sanjay twitching like he's having a seizure?" Jim thought. Gun left the frothing redhead to Jim and yawned as he wandered into a nearby room to get some sleep. However, as soon as the door opened, Gun froze. The room was filled with statues and models, chibi versions to lifelike replicas of the legendary Leon, fully painted with detailed scars and all. Dragging Sanjay inside, Jim explained that his brother was just obsessed with Leon, nothing more. But Gun was Leon. Seeing the scarred head of one statue made him uneasy, so he snapped it clean off, causing Sanjay to scream in horror. Afraid Sanjay might go feral and attack, Jim quickly dragged him out, leaving Gun behind to decapitate all the statues in the room. That day, Sanjay's soul was deeply traumatized, his screams echoing across the city. The evening news even reported on a suspicious person stripping a Gemini faction disciple in public. As soon as Hugo heard about it, he recognized Leon's antics. With a weary sigh and a headache, Hugo wondered why he had to deal with this nonsense right after returning to Korea. Already in a foul mood, Hugo was approached by a waitress asking if he wanted something to drink. Snapping irritably, he told her to shut up and leave. The waitress chuckled, her eyes glinting strangely as her voice shifted to a man's tone, greeting Hugo casually. "You figured it out so quickly? That's no fun at all," the voice said. Still in the waitress's form, Yang Wei slung an arm playfully around Hugo's neck, trying to extract information. This only infuriated Hugo more. He had disliked Yang Wei from the start, always invasive and disgusting. Seeing his antics were provoking Hugo, Yang Wei quickly exited the waitress's mind, leaving her confused and alarmed about why she was suddenly so close to a male customer. Fuming at Yang Wei's cheap tricks but with no one to punch, Hugo swallowed his anger and resolved to find Leon before any other hunters could track him down. The challenge was figuring out where Leon was when only traces of his mischievous exploits remained. Meanwhile, at a shopping mall in Bonn, Sanjay's soul had returned to his body, and he was grocery shopping with Jim. Jim asked, "Do you really think that guy at home is Leon?" Sanjay replied sharply, "Are you kidding? He looks nothing like him." He then shouted, "Leon is a hero for all mankind. How could that guy even compare?" Jim was skeptical but admitted he had seen the man walk out of the Devil's Tower himself, a fact that was hard to ignore. Sanjay remained unconvinced, recalling how his father, the Sagittarius Saint, had declared Leon dead inside the Devil's Tower. Suddenly, a robbery broke out. Before they could process what was happening, a white blur streaked past, blowing everything in its path away. A masked thief clutched a wad of cash and dashed off at lightning speed, using the powers of a cancer disciple. The thief sprinted through the supermarket, snatching goods and cash faster than anyone could see, gloating that no saint could catch him. He was about to move to the next target when a firm hand gently grabbed him. "Gotcha, little rascal," said the owner of the hand. The gentle grip quickly turned into a crushing hold on the thief's stomach, leaving him writhing in pain on the floor. Jim realized the one who had caught him was John. From behind the checkout counter, a silver-haired man called out, "Impressive. It's not easy catching a cancer disciple. But judging from your energy, you seem like a regular disciple. Next time, maybe call the police instead of handling it yourself." Gunn stared at the man, wondering what nonsense he was spewing. Before their conversation could continue, a strange clucking sound echoed through the supermarket. The noise grew louder, coming from both the ceiling and the ground, shaking everything around them. The cancer disciple lying flat on the floor thought it was an earthquake. "This is my chance," he thought, preparing to escape amidst the chaos. But as he bolted, the ground erupted, and a massive, wriggling creature appeared right in front of him. The appearance of the calamity beast drained the color from the thief's face. "Run! I have to get out of here." Desperate to avoid the monster and evade capture, the thief leaped into the air, confident his speed would outpace even a creature with 100 legs. But instead of chasing him, the centipede revealed a massive, fang-filled mouth that opened in his path. Its jaws snapped shut decisively, silencing the thief mid-flight. As onlookers watched in horror, the Spider Queen, her scaled lower body writhing, finished her appetizer and scanned the crowd, her glowing eyes selecting her next prey. "Warning, warning, this is not a drill. The Calamity Beast Spider Queen has appeared in the supermarket. All residents are advised to evacuate immediately." The supermarket descended into pure chaos as the Spider Queen unleashed a horde of monstrous insects, swarming toward the terrified crowd. The creatures moved like a living wave, trapping the panicked shoppers. Those who had watched the mukbang without paying for tickets were now being offered a grim method of settling their debt, their lives. Screams filled the air as people scrambled for exits, their flight hindered by overturned carts and debris. Amid the frenzy, the automated announcement system blared. "Warning! This area has turned red. Evacuate immediately." Near the center of the chaos, a young middle schooler froze in terror, paralyzed as the Spider Queen's massive fangs darted toward him. His sobbing seemed to slow time itself, but just as the jaws were about to close in, a fist collided with the beast's head in a thunderous impact that sent a shockwave through the building. "Kid," said Leon casually, cracking his knuckles as the Spider Queen recoiled, "watch where you're going next time." The boy, too scared to register what had just happened, bolted without a word. John, trying to maintain his cool, scratched his head awkwardly. His moment of heroism had been reduced to looking like a clueless bumpkin. Turning back to the swarm of insects, John's smirk returned. His thoughts raced, a calamity beast in a green zone? Weird, but it's perfect for a little warm-up. His eyes gleamed with excitement as he prepared to test his newly refined slithering serpent technique. Elsewhere, a sleek black car tore down the highway with priority clearance. Inside, Yang Wei's face was drenched in sweat as he clutched his comms device. "Spider Queen?" "In Ban," he barked, confirming the report. He slumped back in frustration, muttering, "We're screwed. Totally screwed." Yang Wei recalled his previous encounter with the Spider Queen. Unable to defeat it, he had barely managed to seal it away, using an absurd amount of resources and manpower. And now, it was tearing apart a green zone supermarket, a disaster waiting to go public. "Sir," one of his subordinates asked hesitantly, "what's the plan for containment?" Yang Wei clenched his fists, cursing under his breath. "Tell them, bury the place. Announce everyone inside is already dead. No one can know how much the Saints invested in stopping that thing." The order left his subordinate stunned, but Yang Wei doubled down, determined to avoid further embarrassment. Back in the supermarket, chaos reached new heights. Giant arthropods of all kinds surged through the aisles. Among them, Si-hoon, an S-rank ice disciple, struggled to hold the line. Slamming his palm to the ground, he summoned a trail of ice, freezing dozens of creatures in one go. He gasped for air, sweat pouring down his face, but even his impressive feat was short-lived. Cracks spread across the frozen surface, and the centipedes began to break free, their grotesque forms writhing with renewed fury. Si-hoon stumbled back, drained and out of options, cursing under his breath. Just then, a voice called out casually, "Chill out, Snowflake. I've got this." Si-hoon looked up to see John, nonchalantly holding a six-pack of soda cans, his grin as infuriating as it was reassuring. Without waiting for a response, Gun spun a can in his hand. "Who wants a drink to cool off?" he quipped. The centipedes hissed and surged toward him, but John's hand radiated an overwhelming force as he launched the cans with deadly precision. Each can flew like a missile, smashing through the horde with explosive power. Even the centipede lurking in the back, preparing to let out a battle cry, was silenced mid-roar as a can rocketed into its gaping mouth. Gun darted around, striking each creature to shut their mouths. The more he fought, the more exhilarated he became, his eyes glowing as he activated his flight mode. After a quick loop, his knife was dripping with blood, leaving SJ's jaw hanging open wide enough to fit a whole bun. The system displayed a message announcing the calamity was defeated, awarding experience points and some ingredients. Ingredients? Gun thought, puzzled. The system materialized a vibrant stone in his hand, explaining that it could be used to craft new skills and relics. He clenched the glowing item, deciding to explore its use later. For now, his body moved fluidly, and Leon felt completely at ease. Ignoring the stunned snowflake kid watching him, Gun casually handed the knife back to Sunjae, saying, "I brought this from home, so here you go." "When did you even get that?" Sunjae muttered. John's relaxed demeanor made the crew cut guy squint as if trying to solve a puzzle. Suddenly, a light bulb seemed to go off, and the guy shouted, pointing a finger at John. "Are you the one who took down our two disciples?" Gun froze for a moment, startled. Wasn't it enough that the fat guy mocked me, and that cow-headed woman gave me trouble? Without hesitation, he lunged forward and punched the crew cut guy, dislocating his jaw. In a menacing tone, Gun sneered, "You know too much. If you didn't want people to find out, you shouldn't have done it in the first place." Outrageous. He was mid-conversation, and suddenly, he's punching people? And those clothes, weren't they stolen? On top of it all, he's openly flaunting an S-rank divine artifact meant only for Gemini disciples. No wonder he'd been caught. Accused of being a thief, Gun showed no shame. Instead, he ripped off the badge and muttered, "What kind of junk is this? Was I really carrying around this country bumpkin trash?" Ignoring Snowflake's fury as he nearly pulled his own hair out, Gun crushed the cheap trinket in his hand, muttering that the witch had scammed them. "These things are so cheap, you could grab a handful at the market." Gun dismissed the so-called relic as nothing more than a decorative piece, expressing disbelief at how little had changed among the scoundrels over the past 2 decades. Just as he voiced his disdain, the Spider Queen attacked once more. Gun noticed, but the others were paralyzed with fear, and the crowd scattered in all directions, more frantic than before. By this time, Gun had already charged at the creature with incredible speed, slamming it into the ground with a powerful kick. The spectators were in awe of his strength, while the Templar was horrified. Gun had leapt into battle without a single relic, relying solely on his fists. At that moment, the Templar received a telepathic warning, "Attention all Templars of the Gemini branch. This is Hyak. SY and S. June, you are to leave the building immediately. The Ares branch intends to seal it entirely. YW is on his way, and we cannot stop him. Even a saint cannot handle the Spider Queen. The building must be eliminated to avoid the saints facing backlash for their failure. S. June, concerned for the remaining people, suggested using his teleportation skill to get out. However, he could only teleport one person at a time. When he chose SY, the latter adamantly refused to leave without his friend or the people still inside. S.June argued it wasn't the time for heroics, as disobeying orders would put them all in danger. He added that the public discovering the Spider Queen in the city could shatter their faith in the saints, weakening humanity's belief in the sacred entities. Despite understanding this, SY refused to abandon the people. Growing desperate, S.June prepared to use force, intending to kill the remaining people to leave SY with no choice. Enraged, SY activated his abilities, ready to fight, but S.June dismissed his attempt as futile due to their difference in power levels. Before the confrontation could escalate, a massive chunk of the Spider Queen's body slammed into S.June, interrupting him. Gun emerged, asking what they were still doing there and warning them to leave immediately. S.June explained the exits were blocked, and the Ares branch planned to seal the building, leaving them with no choice but to fight or teleport. Gun was displeased with their plan and prepared to act. Jang, emerging from the debris, called for Gun to join him, but Gun mocked his fear, noting he seemed ready to run. Picking up his phone, Gun attempted to contact someone for help, but his plan failed when the Spider Queen ensnared him with its webs, immobilizing him before devouring him whole, leaving his phone behind. Gun, undeterred, ordered the others to focus on helping the injured, promising to deal with the situation himself. As the battle raged, YW arrived outside the hypermarket, frustrated at the delay in sealing the building. Just then, a massive snake burst through the barrier, surprising even YW as people fled the scene. Hearing rumors of someone fighting the Spider Queen alone, YW entered to investigate, despite warnings of danger. Inside, he found the Spider Queen slain amidst signs of a brutal battle. Confused, YW wondered who could have killed the beast. Just as he sensed a familiar energy, a voice behind him asked, "Did you miss me?" Startled, YW turned to see Gun smirking and teasing him. On the streets, emergency services arrived as Song pondered whether the man could truly be Lee Gun. Though the man looked different, his movements reminded Song of the legendary figure. Hugo soon approached Song, surprised to see him. Song awkwardly responded, while Hugo expressed relief that he was unharmed. Hugo then asked if Song had seen who destroyed the monsters inside the building. Song merely scoffed, leaving Hugo to wonder what kind of man his son had become. Han asked Hugo if Gun Haeong would be okay. Hearing this, Hugo immediately grew alarmed and started pressing Han for details, asking how he knew Gun and what had happened. Han explained that Gun was still in the hypermarket and had managed to defeat the Spider Queen. Furthermore, Gun had introduced himself as Lee Gun. Intrigued and concerned, Hugo asked for more details, but before Han could elaborate, something burst through the hypermarket wall. Meanwhile, YW activated his ability, facing Gun for the first time in 20 years. Instead of greeting him, YW launched an attack, questioning how Gun had survived the demonic tower. Observing Gun closely, YW noted his resemblance to the Lee Gun he knew, though the scar was gone, his voice was different, and he seemed much younger. Distrustful, YW accused him of being an imposter. Gun, unamused, dismissed the claim. YW declared that anyone daring to deceive the Great One would pay with their life. However, Gun countered with a powerful punch to YW's stomach, sending him flying. Gun then chased him down and slammed him to the ground, scolding him for exploiting his absence. Gun berated YW, accusing him of profiting off stolen relics and wealth while forging his will. He announced his intent to execute YW and destroy everything, the Ares branch, its relics, and even the other saints. Terrified, YW began to wonder if this truly was Lee Gun. The speech, mannerisms, and movements matched perfectly, though it seemed impossible for someone to have survived the demonic tower. Testing him, YW demanded proof. Summoning his magic, he conjured dozens of razor-sharp swords that hovered around him as a crown appeared atop his head. Lee Gun received a notification from the sacred essence of the Ares constellation, the Jade Emperor, acknowledging his presence. Surprised, Gun mocked the attention but prepared for battle. YW, now empowered, unleashed a spell, 100 swords, binding Gun in chains and calling him a weakling. He activated Heavenly Weapon and directed a barrage of swords at Gun, aiming to annihilate him. A mountain of blades formed, and YW assumed victory. Approaching the site, he gloated, mocking Gun's confidence and reckless challenge. Suddenly, a flash of light emanated from the mountain, and a fist burst through the swords, striking YW with immense force, shattering the mountain entirely. Reeling from the blow, YW finally recognized Gun, who sarcastically greeted him, noting how bad YW's weapons even smelled. Staggered, YW realized that Gun's level of regeneration was unparalleled, exceeding even that of Aquarius, the constellation of healing. Gun received another notification. He was near death, and his skill strength 13 had been activated, significantly boosting his power. Smirking, Gun decided to test his new abilities. The sacred essence of the Aries constellation, observing from afar, panicked at Gun's survival, exclaiming that this should not have been possible. In fear, the entity fled, cursing in its retreat. YW, horrified, watched helplessly as his sacred essence abandoned him. Before leaving, Gun vowed to make YW experience the same suffering he endured in the demonic tower. As YW writhed in pain, servants and Hugo arrived at the scene. They found all the monsters dead, with Hugo sensing Gun's energy. Using his abilities, Hugo confirmed it was indeed Lee Gun. Though accustomed to Gun causing trouble, even Hugo thought this was excessive. The servants, sensing the residual aura, remarked on how weak it seemed. Hugo, trying to take control of the chaotic situation, urged everyone to move back before slamming his hand on the ground. The floor beneath them gave way, dropping everyone to where YW lay defeated. Hugo recognized the truth immediately. This man was indeed Lee Gun. YW, unconscious, had a note pinned to him that read, "Sent to the piggy. We are transported to Lee Gun standing at the threshold of the Aries mansion." Surveying the grand estate, he deduced that it likely housed all of his stolen relics. Entering the mansion, Gun found himself surrounded by relics and people. He mockingly commented that someone here was pretending to be a treasure god. His sharp senses identified traces of his belongings, though many weapons were fake. Spotting a familiar toothpick he'd once used, Gun smiled in nostalgic triumph. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the mansion, and guards rushed to confront him, demanding he relinquish the relic. Gun casually remarked that he hadn't planned to fight but would oblige anyway. In a flash, he incapacitated the guards, marveling at how the old stuff was far superior to what the mansion had to offer. Among the relics, he found a slug-like object, a slime relic capable of recreating anything. A notification revealed that this item fulfilled the conditions for his crafting workshop skill, allowing him to establish a massive workshop. Gun, amused, gave the slug its trait and prepared to leave, only to sense a powerful aura from a hidden relic of the Aries constellation. Deciding it would be a shame to leave empty-handed, he opened the sealed doors. By the time Hugo arrived, chaos had engulfed the building. Fleeing people confirmed Gun's handiwork. Spotting Gun walking out with an enormous bag of loot, Hugo, desperate, called out to him. Gun grinned and prepared to greet his old friend, but Hugo ran past him, mistaking him for someone else. Tearfully, Hugo berated Gun for not contacting him and demanded to know what had happened. Furious at the mistake, Gun retaliated with a punch and sarcastically asked if Hugo wanted to die for confusing him with someone else. Hugo, thrilled to see Gun alive, ignored the anger and embraced him. Gun, though pleased, was still irritated and punched him again, scolding him for rushing in uninvited. Amidst this reunion, Hugo's sacred essence, the god Apollo, materialized, suspicious of Gun's survival. Apollo declared that he would test the truth by shooting Gun with an arrow. Furious, Gun dismissed Apollo as a vile god who greeted people by pointing weapons at them. Despite Hugo's attempts to mediate, Gun reminded Hugo of his grievances. His home was sold, his belongings were stolen, and now, even his relics were scattered. To Hugo's chagrin, Gun revealed his bag full of stolen items, which he referred to as a couple of trinkets. Their conversation was cut short when a giant avatar emerged from behind the mansion, a terrifying beast, the avatar of the Aries constellation, known as the Beast of Plenty. It snarled at them, and a notification warned Gun that this avatar protected Aries' relics and wealth. Hugo, overwhelmed, suggested leaving the stolen goods behind and fleeing, but Gun smirked and confidently told Hugo to watch. Gun summoned his pet relic and ordered it to transform into a knife. The pet complied but appeared unstable, unable to handle the fight in its current form. Gun channeled his power into the relic, striking it with lightning to awaken its true form, a massive sword radiating lethal energy. A notification revealed that the sword had inherited the Snake Hunter trait, drastically increasing its sharpness and impact power. With his weapon ready, Gun activated his newly discovered skill, Path of Death. The ability revealed the Beast of Plenty's weaknesses, and Gun, exhilarated by the newfound power, lunged at the avatar, declaring he would break it up a little. Hugo, watching Gun recklessly charge into battle, couldn't help but reflect on his friend's signature style, diving headfirst into danger without a second thought and always emerging victorious. The sight filled Hugo with a mix of admiration and joy, as he was overjoyed to have his old friend back. However, his joy turned to horror when the avatar of Ares pinned Gun to the ground with its massive paw. Hugo screamed, fearing the worst, but Gun's voice cut through the tension. From beneath the paw, Gun grumbled, "What are you yelling for? What a stink! I almost died from the smell of this pig." With that, the massive paw was severed in an instant. The avatar howled in pain, activating its skill to absorb all valuables in its vicinity. Gun, unimpressed, smirked and chided the beast for being noisy. He raised his sword, activating Otis Line, and declared that one light slash would suffice. With a single swing, an immense shockwave tore through the avatar, obliterating it and leaving a massive scar on the earth, as well as shattering the building behind it. Everyone stood in stunned silence, including Hugo, who marveled at Gun's overwhelming power, reminiscent of his prime. With the avatar defeated, a notification informed Gun that he could claim the Beast of Plenty as his own avatar. Though initially skeptical, Gun touched the creature. In an instant, the beast revived, transformed, and shrank in size. It grew wings and took on a sleeker, more majestic form, marking it as the avatar of Gun's Otis constellation. Gun commented that the creature would make an excellent repository for his relics, much to Hugo's disbelief. A notification prompted Gun to name the beast, and without hesitation, he shouted, "Piggy Bank." The scene transitioned to Hugo's mansion, where Gun wasted no time accusing Hugo of being a traitor. Offended, Hugo protested, saying he had been deeply worried all these years. Gun, however, vented his frustration. While he had been trapped in the Demon Tower, suffering unimaginable torment, Hugo had been living a happy life, getting married, starting a family, and seemingly forgetting his old friend. Gun accused him of failing even to recognize him upon his return. His words struck a chord with Hugo, who felt both anger and guilt. In an awkward attempt to apologize, Gun slapped Hugo on the back, adding that he shouldn't have brought it up and that divorce wasn't so tragic these days. Hugo, indignant, shouted that he wasn't divorced, but as Gun's teasing continued, Hugo decided to change the subject. He asked what had happened inside the Demon Tower. Gun recounted the harrowing events. He revealed that the raid had been a trap. Stabbed in the back by someone he trusted, he was left to rot in a tower teeming with endless hordes of monsters. Among them was Red Eye, a foe presumed dead but revived in a new, horrifying form. Despite defeating Red Eye's true body, Gun faced an even greater threat, the tower administrator, who resurrected the slain monsters repeatedly. Exhausted after killing the administrator and its minions, Gun collapsed, fully expecting to die. When he awoke outside the tower, he was filled with strange, new energy. However, one thing was clear: the traitor who betrayed him was intimately familiar with the tower's structure and had deliberately sent him to his doom. Gun vowed to hunt down those who had stolen his possessions and mete out a special punishment for the backstabber. Determined to prepare, Gun summoned his workshop and began crafting new equipment. Using materials like the Spider Queen's core and a misfortune-inducing fragment, he fused them with an unassuming toy horse. The process emitted dazzling creation effects, culminating in the birth of a new entity, a fake Crimson Horse. This unique relic could transfer the magic of anyone whose name was written on it to its owner. Gun grinned, remarking that sentient relics like this had the potential to evolve on their own. Hugo, surprised, patted the object and remarked that while it was highly valuable, its design was utterly dreadful. G, visibly annoyed, yelled at him, emphasizing the significant amount of material he had used to create the horse. He added that he had intended to use the remaining materials to craft something for Hugo, but now he had no desire to do so. Hugo quickly backpedaled, praising the design as elegant and calling Gunn a master craftsman in creating beautiful relics. He clarified that by disgusting, he had only meant his own inability to appreciate the full aesthetic of Gunn's creation. Gunn, somewhat appeased, stated he would consider Hugo's behavior and suggested their first task would be to lure all the saints. Hugo asked how they could manage that, given it was unlikely the other constellations would leave their domains. Gunn confidently replied that he had a plan and pulled out a golden box. He explained that it was a royal relic, the Golden Fleece storage, capable of holding items of any size and even multiplying them for a price. Hugo, astounded, noted that royal relics were the rarest and most valuable artifacts, usually inaccessible. He questioned how Gunn had obtained it, considering only Yang had access. Gunn dismissed the teasing Hugo for being from a beggar constellation, claiming he brought it along just to use as a wallet. Enraged, Hugo shouted that his constellation was called something entirely different. Gunn explained that high-quality relics required far more materials than average ones, and the Golden Fleece would allow him to generate new materials to create many high-ranking relics. Hugo asked how that could work, as someone with the right ability would need to activate the relic. Gunn wondered why Hugo couldn't do it. Hugo retorted loudly, reminding Gunn that his sign was Sagittarius. They both slumped in exasperation, with Hugo asserting it was impossible and suggesting they find another solution. Gunn, however, revealed he had already sent a request to the news network. Shocked, Hugo demanded to know what exactly he had done. Gunn, feigning ignorance, avoided answering. Hugo shouted again, pressing for details. Finally, Gunn revealed the message, leaving Hugo utterly horrified. The scene shifted to the Blue House in South Korea, where officials discussed their recent embarrassment over failing to handle a single spider. Bishop Leo Oliver criticized their involvement in battles with enticers, suggesting they should stick to selling talismans. He was rebuked for his statement but replied mockingly, mentioning an unknown boy who reportedly killed the Spider Queen, speculating it might be Lee Gunn risen from the dead. Sung Hyak, frustrated, smashed a glass and accused Oliver of idolizing Lee Gunn. Oliver, unfazed, mocked the idea, pointing out that Lee Gunn's success during the raid in burning Russia was due to being supported by other saints and provided with superior weapons. Sung countered, sarcastically reminding Oliver that the Spider Queen was ultimately defeated by their twin branch, though at the cost of an S-rank Templar's life. Oliver dismissed their loss with a sneer, saying he'd shake the Templar's hand if he could, though it would require digging into the monster's stomach. The two men bristled with anger at each other. Nearby, a man listening wondered when the Blue House had turned into a den for such scoundrels. A servant burst in, announcing urgent news and urging them to turn on the television. The broadcast revealed that a mysterious package had been delivered, containing photos of the holy sign of Aries and a note reading, "I'm back." Handwriting analysis confirmed it was a 99% match with the missing hero, Lee Gunn. Back at Hugo's house, Hugo, furious, demanded to know what Gunn had been thinking when sending such a message. Gunn casually dismissed his concerns, calling it a simple announcement to let everyone know their heads would soon be on his plate. Hugo shouted that drawing attention was bad enough, especially since Yang W's death was already a massive issue. Gunn, unbothered, corrected him, stating Yang W wasn't dead, nor was he truly alive. Horrified, Hugo stared as Gunn pulled out a toy, explaining it contained Yang W's astral body. Hugo struggled to process the claim, questioning if such a thing was even possible. Gunn shrugged it off, saying it wasn't the main point, and handed Hugo a dagger, explaining it was the very weapon that had been lodged in his back, the same one that caused his imprisonment. Hugo examined the dagger and instantly recognized it as the weapon that nearly led to Gunn's demise. Judging by its unique design, it was far from ordinary. Hugo commented that if this was the weapon used, it couldn't have been Yang W behind the attack. Gunn, smirking maliciously, stretched the toy in his hand and remarked that Yang W should probably apologize. He then mentioned his plan to visit the shopping complex. Hugo, confused, asked why he wanted to go there. Gunn pointed at the toy and said that Piggy had mentioned seeing a blade with a similar shape at the complex. Afterward, Gunn asked Hugo for some clothes. Once changed, he instructed his second guard to protect the house. Hugo asked why he called him number 2 and whether there was a number 1. As Gon left, he casually replied that he'd return soon, leaving Hugo fuming. The scene shifts to the Ares mansion, where numerous servants were investigating. The head servant confirmed that the Ares constellation wasn't present, nor was the aura of the sacred essence detectable. Sophie, the holy sign of Aquarius, lounged in a bath and questioned where he could have gone. The servant speculated that he might have taken his belongings and vanished. Sophie mused that if he had secretly negotiated deals with other saints, it could lead to bigger issues. She sarcastically referred to him as a fat bald man while wondering about his whereabouts. Another servant speculated that Li Gun might have abducted Yang W. Sophie laughed, dismissing the idea as absurd. The servant apologized for speaking carelessly, but Sophie reassured her that it was fine. She then stated they'd visit the shopping complex as planned, intending to dispose of unnecessary relics and prepare funds for the upcoming auction. Another servant burst into the bathroom, announcing an issue: another saint would also attend the auction. The scene shifts to a gym where two individuals informed Mr. Stephen that a relic belonging to Li Gun would be auctioned. Stephen immediately dropped his weights, declaring it was finally his chance to secure the relic. Meanwhile, in an alley, Song Wai and Gon teleported to a relic trading complex. Despite teleportation being expensive, they managed to do it for free. Gon thanked Song Wai for his assistance, particularly his expertise in locating SS-ranked relics. Song Wai, recalling Hayek's orders to recruit the man who killed the Spider Queen at any cost, looked at his phone. The message from his boss promised black card access, unlimited free teleports, and a lucrative contract for the recruit. Gon noticed the phone and questioned why Song Wai's boss kept bothering him after the incident at the hypermarket. Holding the dagger, Gon handed it back, mentioning it had been helpful in the battle against the bugs. Song Wai noted the dagger had been heavily leveled up but said he felt broken after that fight. Gon reassured him, explaining that the dagger had been fully restored, albeit with slight changes in efficiency. Song Wai expressed gratitude. The two reached an SS-ranked appraiser. Onlookers were surprised to see such a high-ranking individual in this place. The appraiser turned out to be Sophie Mart, who was preparing for the auction. At the entrance, Sophie was told the appraiser was busy with another client. Irritated, she wondered who dared to occupy the appraiser when she was present. However, she composed herself and decided to wait her turn. Inside, Gon admired the relics and commented on the building's prices being appropriate for an SS rank. The appraiser began questioning Song Wai about the relic's origins, prompting Gon to claim credit. The appraiser asked if Gon had any connection to Li Gun, causing Song Wai to clarify that Gon was merely imitating the hero. The appraiser, Jin, asked to speak privately with Gon. He questioned Gon's connection to Li Gun, noting that the relic resembled the craftsmanship of the legendary hero. Gon asked why it mattered. Jin explained that while Li Gun was renowned for his combat skills, his craftsmanship was equally legendary. The appraiser noted the relic's authenticity and expressed how impressed he was. Gon asked Jin how he knew so much about Li Gun. Blushing, Jin admitted he was a devoted fan of the hero. Gon, confused, wondered why Jin was so emotional. Jin continued, stating that based on his age, he couldn't have been directly trained by Li Gun but admired his work deeply. Jin then asked Gon to examine a particular relic, a notebook he had received as proof of being recognized as one of Li Gun's students. Gon instantly recognized the notebook as one he had lost long ago. Gon thought back to the annoying newbie who had followed him everywhere in China. Meanwhile, Jin tearfully spoke of how Li Gun truly possessed a refined sense of beauty. He recalled that he had once had the honor of meeting Li Gun. However, one day, Gun had suddenly disappeared, leaving Jin with his notebook. Gun had assumed the notebook was lost, only to later discover that Jin had stolen it. Jin admitted that he couldn't decipher the handwriting, but he was sure it contained many brilliant ideas. He was thrilled to have inherited such a treasure. In reality, the notebook was a list of Li Gun's victims. Gun had thought that after his awakening, he would receive information on his enemies, but now, knowing that Jin was SS ranked, he believed Jin could obtain far more valuable information from it. Jin handed the notebook back to Gun, stating that it would serve the young talent better than it had him. Gun felt a mix of emotions, appreciating the return of the notebook which contained his very first sketches. He had been upset when it was lost. Just then, Gun received a notification: The dormant magic within the notebook was reacting to its owner's aura. The magic of the notebook, influenced by Aut's power, had transformed it into a relic. Jin shouted in awe, realizing that the notebook had become a memory-type relic. He speculated that Li Gun must have cast a spell on it while he was still alive. Suddenly, someone burst in and informed Jin that they were in trouble. A subordinate reported that a saint was waiting outside. Jin clicked his tongue haughtily, dismissing the issue as trivial. Outside, Sophie stood, fuming at the audacity of these people staring at her. Sui, standing nearby, thought it unusual for Sophie to show up at such events, as she usually reserved herself for official matters. Sophie, clearly impatient, declared that waiting was a waste of time and she would go inside and hurry things along. At the same time, she fumed because she believed the appraiser should be offering a fair price for the relics so she could have enough funds for the upcoming auction. She was informed that there was still a client inside, but she was curious about who it could be that warranted such attention. Then, Sophie saw Li Gun. She was taken aback, thinking he was remarkably handsome and wishing she could get a closer look. But her gaze shifted to a huge snake, which startled her. She dropped to her knees in shock. The others asked if she was okay. Sophie was overwhelmed by a terrifying aura, feeling as though hundreds of venomous snakes were wrapping around her. She immediately realized she needed to leave, though Jin wondered why she had suddenly fled, sensing she was unwell. Meanwhile, Gun received a notification about a subordinate of another sacred entity approaching. The report noted that the opponent's divinity had been transferred to Audis, and the current rate was 35%. Gun, confused, wondered if divinity was the same as magic power. He learned that divinity was the sacred power needed to maintain the strength of a saint. Gun had the ability to steal divinity from followers of other branches, and if the value dropped to zero, the saint's power would begin to wane, leaving them vulnerable. Gun was surprised by these mechanics. He then asked Jin if the woman who had just entered was also a saint. Jin asked if Gun didn't recognize her, as she was frequently featured in news stories about saints. He revealed her name, Sophie M., the holy sign of Aquarius. Gun chuckled, amused that everyone was so excited about her. He didn't understand the hype, as Sophie was just another saint. Gun also noted that Sophie had transformed quite a bit. While it was no surprise that he hadn't recognized her immediately, she had always been attractive, and now she was even more so. However, despite her appearance, Gun knew her rotten soul hadn't changed. Jin remarked that if he had to compile a list of things he despised, like fish bones, pests, and sewage, Sophie would fit perfectly in the pest category. He said he didn't even want to think of her as human, given how much more concerned she was with her appearance than with the well-being of others. Jin also commented that he didn't understand why people considered her a saint of mercy and sacrifice, as she was incredibly selfish. Gun was surprised by how much Jin seemed to know about Sophie. Jin explained that Sophie had once helped Li Gun with healing, but under the pretense of kindness, she tried to seize all his wealth. Gun realized that other saints were also after his riches, which had eventually been taken over by the government. Gun wondered if they were really trying to steal the wealth accumulated under his name. Jin then speculated that Sophie was about to call out the young man's name. Gun asked if this meant the two of them were previously acquainted. Gun stated that they were old friends before they were teleported to a nearby alley. Sophie, startled, wondered why his face came to her mind at that moment. The magical aura that had tried to consume her felt similar to that person's. Sophie asked her subordinate if she had ever been so terrified that even death seemed more appealing. She then ordered her to return to the pawn shop and find out who the man was. The subordinate agreed but inquired about the appraiser. Suddenly, Sophie changed her mind and instructed her subordinate to just eliminate them. The subordinate replied that the appraiser was under the protection of the Virgo branch and that they still needed to sell the relics to him. Sophie told her to act as though one had kept the saint waiting, and the other had dared to embarrass her. She said they both deserved to be punished and even offered to give her a relic and lend her some sacred essence power. The subordinate reminded Sophie that magic was forbidden in the neutral zone. Sophie, unfazed, asked if the subordinate was refusing to follow the saint's orders. The subordinate, desperate, bowed and accepted, stating that the desire of a saint was the desire of heaven itself, and that she could never resist the command of one of the 12 saints who upheld their entire world. Meanwhile, Gun stood nearby, observing, and asked, Is the roof leaking? The scene shifted to the relic trading complex in the central zone, where Sei was casually walking down the street, sipping juice, when he noticed something strange. The area wasn't wet from rain, yet there was spilled water. He bent down to investigate and felt a strange magical energy. Suddenly, he saw a water reflection of himself and jumped back in shock, dropping his juice. The creature that emerged from the puddle was some kind of water monster. Sung Wai wondered what was going on. He turned around to see that there were more water monsters, as many as there were people around. Some bystanders thought it was a show, while others were horrified. Sophie, observing from a distance, sneered. She remarked that summoned creatures were typically only as powerful as ranked Templars, but if an army of them attacked all at once, even an elephant could struggle. Sway, turning to his subordinate Sophie, asked why she was using combat skills in the neutral zone. He shouted for her to stop, but the subordinate calmly replied that this was a saint's order and there was no need to worry. She said they were acting according to the will of the gods. As she activated the relic, she ordered the water copies to attack. Sei rushed toward her, but the flash of magic was quicker. A pillar of light shot into the sky as the subordinate used the water balloons to trap people nearby. She declared that she would handle the appraiser and instructed the others to capture him. The water copies scattered behind her. Sway realized he was in a dangerous situation. He thought he needed to get out of there before losing consciousness but found himself starting to fade. Meanwhile, Gun stood still, observing the increasing amount of water on the ceiling. Jin asked if something was happening outside, feeling the strange currents of magic. Suddenly, the water copies grabbed Gun, and a knife was pressed to his throat. The subordinate warned Gun not to move, saying it was nothing personal but that he had dared to offend the saint. She cautioned him not to do anything rash if he wanted to avoid bloodshed, adding that the saint had ordered them both to be killed. The subordinate said that if they offered sincere apologies and bought the relics at a high price, perhaps she could speak on their behalf. Jin remained unfazed, completely calm. He remarked that people weren't allowed to brandish knives in public anymore, which shocked the subordinate. Gun replied that he never considered using a gun, then told Jin to ask them to come out and pay compensation for the damage. The appraiser was preoccupied, however, with the fact that the knife was a gift from the Aquarius constellation. Gun, without hesitation, destroyed the knife with his bare hands. The subordinate became angry and reminded him that she had told him not to push too hard. At that moment, the water snake launched an attack on Gun, but he struck out with his hand and destroyed it. Gun asked the subordinate if she had any more of the creatures because they felt amazing. The subordinate, however, thought this was nonsense, as Gun had easily knocked out the clone with a single blow. She realized that the saint had become ill for a reason, and this man was dangerous. She understood that she needed to deal with him quickly before he caused more trouble. The subordinate then stated that the creatures they summoned were created from the purest magic of a saint. She used her orange-class summon, a wave of water, to attack. Gun remarked that these summons seemed happy to see him. Turning to the appraiser, he said that Jin had told him he could take what he liked, so Gun decided to borrow some knives. Immediately, Gun disappeared from his spot, charging towards the enemy. He noted that the daggers were quite pretty, and as he used them, he received a notification that the information had been collected, Water Chaga calling for oblivion. Gun shouted that they felt no stronger than yard dogs. He mused that these weapons exceeded A-class summons but didn't think they were much of a threat. He added that he was only planning to evaluate his items, but this encounter had turned up something far more valuable, information about a fragment of a duplicate mirror. Gun received another notification that he no longer needed to sleep and that his Holy Throne experience had increased. Meanwhile, the subordinate couldn't believe how easily the saint's summons had been destroyed. She was terrified, realizing that if she tried to attack, she would be immediately killed. Gun smiled and said that the ones who shout "it's not over yet" are the most pathetic. The appraiser began to realize that this was no ordinary man. Sei, also realizing the gravity of the situation, said he had just been attacked by a Templar from the Aquarius branch. Gun confirmed that they were finishing up here and mentioned the magical energy, suggesting that it indeed came from a saint's summons. Gun pointed out that by sending him something like that, they were just giving him new resources. Sway then advised they leave before the next attack. However, the appraiser called out to them, asking them to wait. He recalled how, 20 years ago, he had followed Gun and listened to his art, clearly remembering how Gun had collected materials after each battle with monsters. Jin had once described Gun as fighting like a demon and having a crazy fighting style, and now the appraiser was putting it all together. He asked if this could be the same person, Lee Gun. Gun confirmed his identity, and the appraiser was overjoyed. Gun said he would come back for the materials and asked the appraiser to keep an eye on them. He still had some questions but decided to leave for now. The appraiser bowed and said, "Of course, please come again." As they left, Sui asked why the saint was targeting Gun. Gun replied that she must have been upset about something but didn't go into detail. Sui, curious, asked if Gun had offended her in any way. Gun simply said, "You'll see something fun soon." The scene then shifted to a cafe, where Gun was happily eating ice cream and praising the local treat, calling it awesome. He urged Sui to eat as much as he could. Sui, grateful but concerned about the cost, mentioned that this place might be expensive. Gun reassured him that it was fine, as he had picked up something earlier. He explained that it was an emblem, similar to a bank card, which granted him many privileges. With the emblem, Gun could even rent other people's skills. Sui mentioned that he hadn't noticed the Aquarius emblem on Gun before, and he immediately began to worry that it might cause problems since the emblem also acted as an identity identifier. Gun told him not to worry about it for now and suggested they think about it after the meal. Just as they were talking, Sui's boss, Bishop S. Hayek, approached them. Sui greeted him and asked if they minded if he joined them. Gun, meanwhile, was wondering if this was the boss who had been bothering Sui. Hayek, happy to meet them, spoke to Gun and asked if Sui had mentioned him. Sui then explained that he had told Gun about an amazing person who had managed to defeat spiders when Yang W had failed miserably. Gun asked Sununu what his business was, and he explained that hiring promising awakened ones was one of the bishop's main tasks. Gun inquired about what he could offer him, to which Sununu replied that the upcoming big auction would feature one of Li Gang's legendary relics. Sununu suggested they continue their conversation while enjoying the auction process, and Gun, intrigued, stopped eating his ice cream. He thought about the relic and what it could mean, wondering aloud if it was really true. Sununu confirmed that the auction house was not far, and said it would be held at an altitude of 4,876 meters above the ground, at the largest auction house located in the floating city of Drachma. The scene shifted to the Drachma auction house, where Sophie sat, visibly shaken and worried about something. A man, Stephen, told her to stop shivering in the corner and to get moving. Sophie, still annoyed by his attitude, realized that she needed to keep her temper under control for now. Stephen, a powerful figure who had surpassed Li Yang, was the holy sign of the lion, and Sophie knew there was no safer place than beside him. He declared that Li Gang's relic would be his and warned Sophie not to try and claim it. Sophie, confused and anxious, asked where Stephen was going, but he didn't answer. He simply told her to sit down and not make a fuss, then left, leaving her alone. Sophie stared out the window, trying to calm herself, convinced that whoever the man was, he wouldn't be able to enter the auction house. But just then, she noticed someone. It was Hugo Otis, a welcome guest who had arrived just in time. Hugo, meanwhile, was wondering where Gun had gone. Knowing Gun's character, he was sure that Gun would show up at the auction house. Drachma City was known for its treasure troves of precious relics, and Gun would not miss such an event. Sophie, appearing behind Hugo, greeted him, saying it had been a long time. She asked how he was doing. Hugo was less than pleased to see her, visibly upset. Sophie noted how time had changed things, pointing out that Otis used to be a handsome man representing the saints. Hugo's expression shifted, and Sophie wondered aloud if his condition was due to his decreasing number of followers. Hugo snapped at her to back off, stating that he didn't want to talk to her. Sophie pressed on, claiming that at this rate, Otis' son might end up suffering the same fate as his wife. Sophie smiled, mentioning that his wife wasn't dead but her condition was indistinguishable from death. She further implied that the disgrace brought upon his house was due to none other than Otis himself. Enraged, Hugo tried to walk away, but before he could, there was an explosion. Sophie remained calm and laughed, remarking that he had managed to restrain himself. Sophie then mentioned the agreement Otis had signed 10 years ago and teased whether she should teach the arrogant boy a lesson. At that moment, someone called out to Sophie, referring to her as a parasite. Sophie turned around just in time to receive a blow from Gun, who struck her forehead with a single finger, knocking her unconscious. Hugo turned to see Gun and was shocked to see him. Gun, looking down at Sophie, asked what Otis had left behind and expressed his concern for him, knowing that he couldn't let Gun out of his sight. Gun asked Otis if he had a crush on Sophie, but Otis dismissed it, telling him to stop talking nonsense. Gun, unfazed, asked why they kept running into Sophie and whether Otis had a crush on her. Otis was furious and thought Gun was ridiculous, wondering how someone like Gun could have such an issue with his head. The scene then shifted to a flashback, showing an event that took place 20 years ago. Gun was walking through a castle, with his subordinates shouting at him to stop. One of them stood in his way and warned him that he was in the residence of the sign of Aquarius, ordering him to leave. Gun, however, simply told her to move and, when she refused, she screamed in fear and confusion as she ran away. Sophie, in the past, confronted Gun, demanding to know how he dared to break into her house. She ordered him to leave immediately, but Gun silenced her by smashing the wall behind her. He asked if she really wanted to die and questioned her actions. Sophie, startled, asked what he was doing, but Gun continued, asking if she was going to pretend like this. Gun revealed that he had sent her to treat the injured people, implying that her purpose there was not what she seemed to believe. Gun asked why Sophie was loafing around. Danon began shouting about how many people had lost their arms and legs trying to save her worthless life. Gun reminded her that she had promised to help others when she arrived. Sophie retorted, asking what difference it made if a few more people died, claiming the people across the street should be grateful for the chance to save her. She screamed that the stress had already affected her skin and that she wasn't going to waste time on some trivial chore. Annoyed, Gun angrily told her to get lost, but she continued, saying she had an interview and needed time to apply her makeup. Sophie demanded to be let go, questioning why Gun was squeezing her so tightly. He refused, slapping her and saying if she wasn't a parasite, maybe she'd understand. He declared that no matter how many times he tried, he wouldn't get anywhere unless he beat the rot out of her. Eventually, Sophie was forced to treat the wounded until they lost consciousness. Sophie thought to herself that Gun was truly a mad barbarian. When Sophie woke up, she realized Gun was sitting across from her. Shocked, she screamed in frustration, demanding to be untied and asking how they dared treat her this way. Gun commented that she hadn't changed in 20 years and wondered how she managed it. Sophie threatened them, thinking she wasn't the weak girl she once was. She was confident she could melt the ropes, but Gun slapped her forehead again, saying she looked like she was up to something. He noticed something was wrong with his finger. Sophie began to boast that she had an acid layer protecting her from external attacks, and that now this acid would eat him from the inside out. She fantasized about Gun begging for mercy. However, Gun revealed that his wound had already healed, leaving Sophie shocked. The melted tissue had instantly recovered. She thought to herself that this was a real scam. Gun called her a parasite and asked why she couldn't remember everything between them. He accused her of lying and claiming his battle recovery power as her own. He gave her 1 hit for that and 5 more for sending her subordinate to the appraiser. Then, he reminded her of what she had said to Tiku, saying she would get 50 more punches for that. Sophie begged him to wait, and Gun did so briefly, but then said time was up. He landed a final blow, and she screamed. Otis, sitting beside Gun, thought Gun was quite effective at beating the bad out of people, regardless of their gender. Suddenly, Otis felt that with each strike, Gun's divinity level was rising. He wondered what kind of divinity Gun was accumulating. After Gun finished beating Sophie, she passed out. Gun received a notification that divinity had been unlocked. He asked for a reminder of what divinity was. It was explained that divinity was the power needed to sustain the saint's energy. It could be taken from followers of sacred entities, and if it dropped to 0, death would follow. Gun realized that by beating the saints, he was draining their divinity. He also thought he probably couldn't get divinity points from Yang W yet because it hadn't been unlocked. Still, he knew he needed to grow stronger. Otis wondered if Gun would ask Sophie about the dagger, but Gun said she wouldn't have the courage to attack him. He'd already found someone to examine the dagger. Otis realized that Gun was only doing this for fun. Gun then pulled out his smartphone to check the time. Otis asked where he got it from, and Gunn casually replied that he had borrowed it from a kid. Gunn said it was time to go to the auction room and asked Hugo to clean up. He suggested Hugo throw Sophie in the nearest trash can and promised to call him once the auction was over. Otis was left wondering what to do about the situation. Just then, the elevator opened. Otis thought it was Gunn returning, but his face changed when he saw who it was. Stephen Marker had arrived. Stephen turned to Hugo and advised him to explain himself. Entering the room, Stephen greeted them, saying it had been a while. He addressed Otis as Sagittarius and expressed his displeasure at meeting them. Otis asked what Stephen was doing here, and Stephen explained that he and Aquarius had made a deal. He mentioned that he had business to attend to in Drachma, so he had agreed to come. Stephen said it was his turn to ask questions. The first thing he asked was why Otis was here. Otis responded that he had his own business to attend to. Stephen then asked if Otis was targeting Lee Gunn's relics. Otis questioned if his relic was going to be auctioned off. Stephen asked if Otis didn't know, mentioning that even though he was the weakest of the constellations, Otis still couldn't afford them. Otis smiled and remarked that the Lion had been chasing after Gunn's old relics for a long time. Stephen tried to ignore Gunn, but his growing inferiority complex made him collect all of Gunn's relics, without exception. Otis asked if Stephen believed this would make him as strong as Gunn, which made Stephen furious. He went into a rage just hearing Gunn's name from Otis. As expected, Stephen decided to attack Otis. He turned to Hugo, telling him to stop talking nonsense about that weakling. Stephen grabbed Hugo's hand, warning him not to mention Gunn's name again. Furious, Stephen claimed that he had become much stronger than Gunn. Suddenly, someone ran up to Stephen, informing him they were in trouble. The person told Stephen that Twin Branch was buying up all of Lee Gunn's relics. Stephen dismissed Hugo, saying he had no time for him and needed to get to the auction as soon as possible. As he left, Stephen told Hugo to do whatever he wanted with Sophie. Hugo indignantly asked if Stephen had come here to save her, but Stephen said the auction was more important. He needed to get there early. Stephen, in the tone of an old friend, advised Hugo that if he wanted to live long, he should be more careful with his words. Hugo grinned, saying he appreciated the advice. They left, leaving only Hugo and unconscious Sophie in the room. Hugo looked at his injured hand, pondering what it meant that Stephen didn't even consider him weak. The scene shifted to the Drachma auction house, where the auction was taking place in the VIP room. The host announced the end of the first stage and the beginning of the second stage after a short pause. Gunn, who was drinking, shouted to add another item to the collection. Sun congratulated him, saying Gunn could buy anything he wanted. Gunn replied that Sun was too kind, since he had invited Gunn to the VIP room and now was buying whatever Gunn asked for. Sun replied it was the least he could do for Gunn. Sway asked if the bishop was sure, as they had already spent an enormous amount. S said it was fine and asked if he could pay for the alcohol. Sun replied that he had forgotten his card and would send the money later. S thought about how much he had already paid but didn't dare argue with Sun, his boss. Gunn waved a card, telling S not to worry as the alcohol had already been paid for. S was shocked, wondering if it was Gunn's black card. Gunn remarked that since S looked drunk, he wouldn't make his subordinate pay for everything. Sun was about to pay with his credit card, thinking that Gunn, though young, was already quite rude. However, the bishop knew that Gunn was a genius, having defeated the Spider Queen. He thought that if he could recruit Gunn, even the cost of alcohol would be a small price to pay. Sun asked if they could move on to the main topic, saying he had high hopes for Gunn's future. He believed Gunn had every chance of becoming as ranked as the higher constellations. He added that it would be even more likely if Gunn earned the favor of their saint. However, Lee Gunn wasn't paying attention to Sun, as all he could think about was the invisible fog of mind control that affected everyone. The effect wasn't strong, but it made people more easily swayed. Sun said he even admitted that Gunn could become a cardinal, but that wasn't the end. Wealth, glory, and respect awaited the great Gemini leader, Sun said. He reached out his hand to Gunn, asking him to join as a follower of the Gemini constellation. Suddenly, Gunn burst into laughter, saying he had been laughing too much lately. He asked if this was really what Sun wanted, questioning if Sun wanted him to become the next figurehead of his worthless god. Sun was shocked, not understanding why Gunn was angry, considering how polite he had been to him. He decided to change the subject, saying there had been a misunderstanding and handed Gunn a relic. A girl entered the room, apologizing for the interruption. She congratulated Gunn, saying it was a relic that belonged to Lee Gunn, with all the necessary certificates ready. Sun was shocked, asking if Gunn had really won one of Lee Gunn's relics. The girl confirmed it, and Gunn replied that it wasn't exactly what he was looking for, but it would definitely come in handy. Sun knew that Steven was so obsessed with Lee Gunn's relics that they couldn't even touch them. Sun apologized, saying the relic had already been claimed by someone else. Just then, the door burst open. Everyone turned to see Steven standing there, asking who had dared touch his relics. Gunn asked if it was Steven who claimed the relic. The girl apologized to Steven. Sun explained that the newcomer had made a mistake due to ignorance, and they would return the relic immediately. Steven said he would turn a blind eye this time, but he told them to return the relic to its proper place. Sun thanked Steven and said they would make the payment later. Steven, on the other hand, thanked Sun and said he didn't need to spend a penny on the girl. He bared his teeth and asked the bishop if he thought he could just take his things. Sun wondered if Steven was really upset over this small oversight, thinking that Steven was trying to leave them without tens of millions of dollars. Gunn interrupted, stating that he won the auction, meaning the relics were now his. He told Steven that if he wanted the relics so badly, he should pay $200 million. Steven was initially shocked, but then he laughed out loud, saying that only underpants would fit in the twin branch. He was impressed by Gunn's audacity. Sun was shocked and very scared, unable to understand why Gunn didn't know who Steven was. Steven said he liked Gunn because, in his opinion, that's what a real man should be like. He believed their meeting wasn't accidental and suggested they introduce themselves. Steven explained that when he met interesting people, he always greeted them warmly. Gunn realized that Steven had managed to increase his strength slightly. He thought it was to be expected from the Lion constellation, which specialized in battles, and knew that other constellations, like Aries or Aquarius, couldn't compare. Gunn knew that Steven wouldn't stop until he had someone in pieces. He thought of Steven as a wicked worm. Steven extended his hand towards Gunn, but the hero remained still. SEI was excited and shouted out, while S was also thrilled that Gunn had provoked Steven. Steven said it was amusing and hoped Gunn would enjoy his life in a wheelchair. Gunn asked what Steven was doing, wondering if he was just shaking dust off his shoulder. Steven was stunned, as the blow had landed perfectly. He asked if Gunn had used teleportation to dodge his skill. Gunn responded, asking if Steven still didn't understand. He said that Steven was as slow-witted as ever. Gunn reminded him that Steven had begged to learn the skill and promised to use it for good, but now he was showing off with it. "Who are you?" Steven asked, confused. Just then, the host entered and apologized for the delay. She announced the second stage of the auction was about to begin. Steven, with more questions for Gunn, realized he had more urgent matters to attend to. He advised Gunn not to lose the pendant and said he would return for it after the auction. Sway asked if Gunn was alright, clearly puzzled by how Gunn had survived Steven's attack. S was also thinking about how Gunn had managed to escape it, as even he couldn't dodge a saint's skill. S had one main question on his mind: who exactly was Gunn? The host then introduced the main highlight of the day's auction. She spoke of the Berlin Wolf incident from 24 years ago, where a calamity-causing individual appeared in Germany, and even weapons and armor melted in the presence of this force. The TW Saints had failed to resolve it, but then Lee Gunn had arrived and defeated the so-called invincible monster. Today, attendees had the chance to acquire the relic that Lee Gunn had used to end the monster's reign. Steven thought this legendary weapon would finally be his. We then flash back 20 years to the night when helicopters flew overhead. A reporter spoke about being above the island where the Berlin Wolf had appeared. 4 days had passed since the 13th awakened Lee Gunn arrived. No one had ventured out, and the situation inside remained unknown. Saints had tried to enter but failed due to the overwhelming energy.
Start my computer. I'll be back in a bit.